Hello, everyone. Welcome back to the You Are a Severance podcast with your refined hosts who have made it with you through this journey. Callie Thomas.
Hello.
And myself, Rodnesha Green. You guys, episode 10. Come on. We got a little bit of what we expected and a lot of what we didn't.
That's for sure.
We got twists and turns, literally and figuratively. We got song, we got dance, we got heartache, we got heartbreak. I don't know. I guess I could be maybe more satisfied, but then if I were more satisfied, it'd probably be the end of all this, right? Because then we'd get every answer and we'd know everything and it'd be all over, right?
Not necessarily.
Oh, you think you could have got a little more and been more satisfied? I'm like, I think this is the level of satisfaction I could have and
I'm saying,
okay.
You're implying that at the end we'll have all of the answers, and I don't think they're going to do that.
Oh, even at the very end?
The very end. Very
You know, you're right. These writers, yeah, you're right. They probably will still leave us wanting a smidge more because they have built up such a world. I don't know, but I'm very satisfied with this finale ending. As I was telling Callie, I think before maybe we started watching this episode, I was like, I'm nervous.
Yes.
Like, I hope it's good. I hope it meets expectations. I hope they don't drop the ball, but also I trust them because so far they have not let us down.
Right.
But also it's nerve wracking.
Yeah.
But I think they did it. How do you feel? What do you think?
Same. And I mean, since you bring up the finale feeling, I was going to say this at the end, but I'll say it now. Thursday night at the end of it, I was very upset because I was like, this is so good. And it's so cinematic, not just in the way that it looks, but in the way that it wrapped up major storylines, even though we have a lot of answers left, which I think is typical of films that know they don't want a sequel. So Thursday night, we did not know yet that season 3 had been renewed. It had been renewed for season 3. Yep. So I was like, oh no, this could be a series finale.
It could be the end.
Is series finale feeling of an episode. Like it could have been the end. And I was like, oh no, because I already was very confused by the fact that they didn't get a renewal at the top of the season with as much advertising they had put in and how much momentum was gained just from all of the preseason stuff they did into that first episode. Typically, that's when you hear like the first episode premieres and then it's like renewed for 2 more seasons already.
Right.
So for them to not announce it until the finale is pretty insane.
Do you think they knew at the top of the season and just held the information because now would just be like the sweetest time to be like, I got you, we're coming back? Because I've been wondering for a while. I'm like, I know they're going to get renewed. I know they are. They'd be crazy not to. But I feel like they're holding on to it till just the right moment.
I kind of feel that way, but then I kind of don't, just because of the add-on that Ben and Adam did for this week's episode of their podcast.
See, I haven't listened yet.
Oh, okay. So they start off with like grainy audio because it's a phone call being like, just in, we just found out. So I don't think that's a lie.
Okay.
For effect, I think they really did just find out Thursday and then they announced it on all the socials on Friday.
Yes.
Yes.
And that is a great pivot to, we've already been doing some pre-show banter, but we're going to add a little bit to that. I don't want to get too into the weeds because we do want to do a separate episode where we just focus on Paley Fest. But we'll give you guys a little bit of a heads up. So as we mentioned to you guys last episode, we did get invited to do press for Paley Fest where they were screening the finale. And that was last night as of the time we're recording right now. And it was wild. Wild in the sense of just like what we got the opportunity to do and have access to. Crazy. So even though we'll go into detail separately in like grander scope, Callie, what were some of your takeaways? Just like minor takeaways from last night.
Well, just for us, we can do anything we set our minds to.
Hey, I like
because imposter syndrome was at level 100 when we were standing in that press line, and Just to give a little more context, we were asked to fill out the press application that everybody fills out. And on
Mm-hmm.
the application, you can indicate if you just want to go to the screening or you want to do red carpet. Now, when we said, hey, we want to go to this, we were just thinking the screening, but on a whim on the application, I was like, red carpet,
Sure.
not knowing what that entailed.
No.
And then as it got closer and we were waiting for the confirmation, I was like, oh, they meet press, red carpet, duh. We're going to be doing interviews, duh. Now we have to prepare for that. We were buying mics last minute.
Oh,
We met to think of questions. We took this very seriously. I was reading articles about journalism
yep.
tips for
Yep.
for red
Yep.
carpet and how
We
to
had
be
a
professional.
whole meeting about like, okay, what are we going to ask, to the point that we wanted to be curated to each person, right? We didn't want to just do
Yes,
blanket questions that
right,
generically could be answered. We wanted to get granular with each individual.
right.
Is that overkill? Maybe, but that's how we roll. So
Yeah, that's my takeaway is that, we are capable.
I think that is a great takeaway. I honestly might echo the same. I'm trying to think of something different to say just for the sake of. Honestly, I feel like it's similar to yours, where it's just like you don't know what you can do until you do it, right? Like
Hmm.
we were put in the fire. Well, we put ourselves in the fire, to be honest.
We did.
And could have crumbled under the pressure. And it was interesting, again, being wedged in with other press folks, right? And we're hearing around us
Yeah,
what people like, how they've prepared, what they're doing, what they're asking. And it's interesting to see where we sit in the midst of all of it, right? And I feel like somewhere along the way, we were like, you know what? Actually, no,
yeah,
we do belong here because we
right.
have prepared. We have,
Hmm.
we're taking it seriously compared to some of the people we were around. We definitely had more knowledge.
Hmm.
We didn't even need the press sheet that they gave us, to be honest.
It was so funny. They handed it to us, and Rodnesha was like, "Oh, do we need to look this over?" And I was like, "Rodnesha, we know everybody." And she's like, "Oh yeah, you're right."
Caution, over caution, anxiety. But yeah, it literally, we knew each person that was coming. We knew their faces. Now, granted, yes, we are fans of the show, but I honestly feel, and we talked about this last night when we were debriefing, I feel like even if it wasn't something we were so invested in, that still would be the level of preparation we would
Right.
come with, right?
Because our
Um,
anxiety just doesn't let us operate that way.
Not
Like,
one
wing
bit.
it. What is that? Wing it? What is that?
Yeah. But I'm proud of us, as I said last night, and I'll say it again.
Hmm.
I'm proud of us. I think we did great. You guys will soon
Same.
see what we gathered, the interviews we got. Listen, that was another thing. We thought we'd maybe get to talk to one person,
Yeah.
two at max. We were like,
We're
listen,
hoping for that.
if we get two people, two decently, visible people, we're golden. We're doing
Yeah.
good. And for a minute, it did seem like that might be all we got.
Yes.
And then things turned around. And again, we'll talk about that later. But yeah, and I feel like each person we got to speak with, it went beyond just answering questions. I feel like there was an
Hmm.
engagement that happened.
Hmm.
There was maybe a little bit of ease that some people were able to get in our presence. And I'm not trying to like prop us up, but also maybe a little I'm trying to prop us up because I'm like, I
Maybe
do
a little
feel
bit.
maybe a little bit. I do feel like, I don't know. There was a vibe in our little bubble where people were like, oh, okay. Oh, all right. Y'all are fun.
Yeah, I think people enjoyed talking to
I
us.
think
I,
so.
I think.
See, even now our anxiety is like, don't get too cocky,
Don't get
kid.
too cocky.
But yeah, I think overall was a great time. It was a great experience. I mean, even for me, like I haven't had too many red carpet experiences as an actor, but as an actor, it's totally different on the other end of
Hmm.
things. To do it from the press side, I was like, oh, this is fascinating
Yeah.
and intriguing. And it's expanding a different part of like my creative brain, right?
Yeah.
But I do also think that there were some ways in which the acting side kind of came in because I remember talking to a friend of mine. They were like, oh, you don't have to be nervous about talking to celebrities. They're just people too. And I was like, I'm actually, the celebrity part doesn't
Yeah.
bother me. I have been around enough quote famous people to not get like, there's probably a handful of famous people that I'd actually like come unhinged around, right? But for the most part, I do get that they're just people. I was like, for me, what was making me nervous was being presented in a professional manner to be taken
Yeah.
seriously, right?
Right.
So, and I remember telling them, I was like, yeah, I'm not bothered about talking to anyone. I just want to make sure that when I do open my mouth, I don't sound like a blistering, blundering idiot. Like that's the
Right.
part that would bug me is if I walked away and was like, God, I was not prepared. I don't know what I just
Right.
said. Oh, they're going to think I'm some dummy who just wandered in off the street.
Right.
So again, when we had those little rapport moments, that was affirming in a different way of like, oh, see, you just create space and let people come into that space and what happens, happens. So I think we did a
Yeah.
good job of creating that space and we look forward to doing it again.
Right. I'd like to say we made a lot of people laugh.
I'd
So
like
that's
to say
always
so
fun.
too. And the evidence will be presented and you guys can see for yourselves. But we had a fun time. It was a great screening. It was fun to be with a bunch of fans. Callie finally got to have the live screening experience.
Oh, yes. Yeah, that's what I forgot. That's the most important takeaway. My redemption arc is complete and I no longer feel the need to complain about missing the season 1 finale screening because this was so, I mean, if season 2 screening had happened in the same exact way that season 1 had happened,
Mm-hmm.
I don't think it would have we wouldn't have gotten the same experience
Right.
completely, right? Because I just know me and my shyness, I wouldn't have gone up to as many people as we spoke to, I wouldn't have gone up
Right.
to talk to in a
Right.
party setting,
Right.
right? But being like, okay, and now here is the UR podcast, talk to them and they have to talk to me. I don't have to talk to so many. Well, they don't have to. They don't have to.
They
But you
don't,
know what I mean.
but yeah, they have been presented, so
In
you
the
don't have to. Yeah.
right in the structure of the press line. So I'm so just again just like so grateful to Ben and Red Hour and
Mm-hmm.
Apple and Paley and
Mm-hmm.
for this opportunity. I could have never had this
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
exact
Mm-hmm.
like coming together of all of the things
Yep.
to be able to do this. It's
Yep.
insane.
Yep.
It's really insane.
Yep. It is. I'm like, I don't have much more to say without again it becoming an hour long conversation that we will have separately. So, tune in for that separate conversation. So I guess let's just go ahead and get into this episode,
Yes.
which boy,
Woo,
we'll
are you
we'll talk
ready?
about it. Yeah, as ready
Here we
as I can
go.
be. I'm as ready as Mark was to go run into the testing floor. Okay.
Okay, goodness. Okay, so the season 2 finale is here to make us laugh, make us cry, and most importantly, march to the beat of our own drum, or C&M's drum. Cold Harbor is about to be completed, but what does that mean for our heroes and anti-heroes? Down on the severed floor, Mark S. is faced with a bold choice to save the love of his Audi's life, but in doing so, it will cost the lives of everyone he holds dear. Mark S. takes a stand, refusing to be backed into a corner by Devon, his Audi, or even the fearsome Harmony Cobell. He demands to be returned to the severed floor, where the choice will be his and his alone. When he arrives back at Lumen, he is joined by Helly, who will bear witness to this final act that will bring about a new era in Kier's war against pain. The clock is ticking as the end draws near. Once the file is complete, there's no turning back from what must be done. The spark of rebellion has been fanned into flame and the hearts of our favorite innies, and we find that the real Macrodat uprising is only just beginning.
All right, guys, here's our cast details for this week. Guest stars include Merritt Weaver as Gretchen, Gwendolyn Christie is back as Lorne, Sandra Bernhard as our nurse in the testing floor, Dari Olafson is Mr. Drummond, Robbie Benson returns as Dr. Maurer, and Michael Seabury is also here to join us as Jane Egan. Our co-stars for this episode include Jonathan James Rodriguez as Bukayo, I'm gonna guess. Bukayo? They did not say his name, so this is just a guess. But he was the guy who basically was trying to call off the marching band during that scene. Yeah,
Oh,
yeah, yeah.
okay. I was like, who is this?
Yeah,
Got you.
yeah,
Okay.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
Thank you for that.
Mm-hmm. Mark Geller is here as Kier Egan in fun form, Blaze Gorman as Jim George, and Irish Gorman as Merrick George. This episode was written by Dan Erickson, creator, genius, and so much more, and directed by equally creative genius Ben Stiller.
Whew.
All right, I'm ready.
You ready? Okay. All right. The scene opens with a question being asked in a blackout. It's Devon's last question to Mark S. Do you remember the last thing you said to me? Mark's answer is also given in the black. She's alive. The scene continues from where we left off in episode 9 with Cobell then asking Mark, did you finish Cold Harbor? Which Mark S. is apprehensive to answer. Instead, he looks around and asks where he is, and Devon answers that it's a birthing cabin. This only stirs up more questions for Annie Mark, and Cobell shuts this down by asking again, more sternly, Cold Harbor, did you finish it? Mark says no, then Cobell sighs in relief, stating that she's still alive and that Miss Casey, or Gemma, can be saved. She begins to describe the black hallway to Mark, who instantly recognizes this description as the hall Irving drew from his visions.
Mm-hmm.
This revelation takes Harmony aback a bit, but clearly that's a story for another time. We then pick up where we left off with Helly and James in MDR. James speaks to Helly about her last appearance before him at the gala and how upset he was after their encounter to realize who she was. I mean, he threw a tin of candies, after all.
A whole
Serious
10.
business.
Mm-hmm.
And Helly calls him weird, and as as she stares at him in disbelief and simultaneously grabs a pen to use as a weapon. Jane steps further into MDR and says, I do not love my daughter. I used to see Kier in her, but he left her as she grew. And then he goes on to tell Helly that he sired many other children in secret, but didn't see Kier in them either. He did, however, say that he saw Kier in Helly, and this provokes her to rush at him with the pen at the ready. She tells James that he and his family created this hell and that they're going to be burned in it. James smiles, seeing his forefather. There he is. He lets her know that tomorrow is a special day, and then he just walks away. Helly is confused and angry, and she screams after him, why did you come here? What do you want from me?
All right, we're in the cabins.
Yeah.
Like you said, I was so frustrated by the fact that no one's just being fully transparent up front. Like y'all are just giving him partial answers. This man just blipped in here and y'all are like, oh yeah, sure. Birthing cabin. Like,
where am I? It's
why do you have questions?
Cabin.
Let's
why
just,
am I in
what does that mean?
Cabin?
What,
right.
Why is she here? Why am I here?
What is a birthing cabin?
Also that. So I'm like, approach this like you would a coma patient, right? Like if they're coming out of a coma, you're not going to be like, blah, 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 like just start talking and approach. Hey, hi, welcome. Okay. I know you've probably got a lot of questions. You haven't been here through most of this. Let's break it down. Okay. Here's what's going on. Here's how you got here. Here's why you're here. Here's what we need you to do. But they never do that. It's just so frustrating.
This is reminiscent of our conversation in season 1 about how effed up their orientation is.
Oh yeah. With. Yep. Just jump you in like a gang. Just no explanation. I did find Cobell's reaction about the Irving mention interesting. Mm-hmm. Now, obviously, we ain't going to cover it this season because Irving done rode the train to wherever. But I was trying to figure out, what is she trying to process? That Irving might have reintegrated and she didn't catch it? That Irving knew, like, does she know that Irving knew about the Black Hall previously and somehow leaks it? Like, I'm trying to figure out what that part was because it didn't seem like total surprise, but just kind of like, how did that happen? Or how's that possible? It was an interesting facial that she gave there.
Yeah. I wonder if that means our thinking about his past involvement with the Black Hallway is wrong. Because it seemed like, like, how does Irving know about it? Well, and that could have just been, how does any Irving know about it?
Right.
But I think if anyone would be aware of the possibility of Audie Irving somehow letting any Irving know, it's probably Cobell. And so that also makes me think she doesn't think any version of him should know about it, which makes me think, man, I'm rethinking everything now. Maybe Irving wasn't talking to a reporter, but somebody else trying to get messages in.
Okay.
And he, for whatever reason, thought maybe Irving would be the more like susceptible. Susceptible is not the right word.
Suggestible seems right.
Maybe that, I don't know. I'm tired, y'all.
Was a long night.
But, maybe he was like selected for a reason and told to paint the Black Hallway.
Okay. I mean, I did have that same wondering of like, is it possible somebody just gave Irving the description of the Black Hall to recreate it? And like you said, and just, try to convey the messaging of it to his innie. I can't figure out which is right. But seeing that made me start to question my own theories about it. And it's like, well, okay, I guess there's a possibility that maybe Irving didn't witness the black hole on his own,
Yeah.
but somebody who he's in touch with on the outside does have a knowledge of it and conveyed it.
Right.
That is very possible. Yeah.
Yeah.
And then Cobell's little nod
The
right there in that
reaction.
scene, I was like, oh, well, shoot, what crap.
What does that mean? Yeah, I agree. It makes me question like the Irving theory for sure.
Yeah, but we won't get an answer this season. All right.
Nope.
Going down to James. I laughed at your statement. He's so hard.
Yeah, like I was like, duh. Like after what we saw last week, yeah, of course. We know you
Pretty
hate that
obvious.
woman.
Pretty
You hate her.
obvious. As I said last week, the more we find out about James, the more I'm like, you're a creep and I don't care for
Hmm.
you. You're over here like, yeah, I didn't like you. I don't really like these other kids either. Oh, by the way, yeah, I got other kids. Okay, here's a question for you.
Oh yeah, I was right though. Remember when you asked me if you think she has siblings, and I was like,
Yes,
yes, but not that she grew up with.
yes, you were. You were right. You're very spot on. And that now makes a whole lot of sense. And then we had the whole thing with Drummond happen this episode, but we don't have an answer about whether he might have been one of them. Maybe
If
it'll come
he's one
later.
of them,
Yeah.
yeah. Well, and then also, I feel like that means it's possible some of these children don't know, right?
Like a Rickon.
Right, like a Rickon or like possibly Mr. Drummond, right, where he provided the specimen, but whatever family still raised them, and then maybe there were tests along the way to see if he could see cure in them, and if he didn't,
Right.
there's no reason to interact with them.
Right. Oh, okay. Two questions. One, why in secret? I've been trying to figure that out since you posed the question that he might have multiple children out there that aren't necessarily connected. What? Because
Mm-hmm.
again, as we've seen so far, James not married, or that we know of. We've seen no wife. I don't know if he was
Right.
married and maybe she's just passed on at this point. We haven't heard anything
Mm-hmm.
about a wife, so I'm trying to figure out why the secrecy about it.
Uh,
And the only thing I can assume is that Helly is a proper Egan that he did have with a wife, and
wife.
then he just had a bunch of bastard babies. All
Yeah, I think maybe it's like a business move too to
mm,
limit the number of people that have
try to vie
like the number of
for.
heirs. Hmm.
Okay, that does make sense. Okay, yeah, that does make sense. This also makes sense to me now why he had Helly severed, right? Or Helena severed. Because if you don't give a shit about her, then it's like, eh.
Yeah, he's like, I don't see Kira in you anymore. How else can you be useful?
Mm-hmm. And so this is another thing that I thought of. The whole statement about seeing Kier in you. I keep wondering what that means. I was thinking about it back when Harmony's aunt mentioned it about how the Egan saw Kier in her and what that could mean. And then it kind of ties in a little later with the goat thing, which is I feel like the spirit of Kier is like almost like a willfulness or a stubbornness or like
Yeah.
the desire to go at and go after anything at any cost,
Mm-hmm.
no matter what, to get what you want. Like that's what the
Mm-hmm.
spirit of Kier feels like to me.
Yeah.
It's like that person who's like overly ambitious. I will do whatever it takes to get what I want.
Fiery,
The end.
passionate.
But the funny part about it is that when he says that it left her as she grew, I'm wondering why did it? And as we talked about last episode, it's like you probably like beat the will out of her. Maybe not
Yeah, you
like
beat it out of her.
physically beat her, but like
Yeah.
you basically conditioned her to a point that it
Uh-huh.
left. So how do you expect
Right.
that to stay without, you know?
And you see it in Helly because innies are childlike. So the longer she's around, the more likely she is to move away from that too.
Mm-hmm. It makes me think we're going back to the fourth appendix, y'all. It makes me think of the whole stories with with Kier and what's his brother?
Dieter.
Dieter, thank you. I was about to say Duncan. I don't know why, but it makes me think of that story and again how they were as kids and like the willfulness they had to like run away and go explore and all these
Yeah.
things. And it's like it's just a very childlike thing. But then naturally, as you grow up and you start putting expectations on kids and rules and all these things, that's going to dissipate. And so, is it like whoever maintains that despite being conditioned with rules? You know what I'm saying? Like how like
Yeah.
and especially for a female child, right? There's a lot
And
more expectations.
it doesn't seem to be in line with the core values
No.
to keep that
And that's what's
quality about
confusing
you.
because all the values and all those other things are telling you to push that back. I don't,
Mm-hmm.
it's very oxymoronic, like it's very contradictory.
Yeah.
Maybe that's again what the spirit is. It's like somehow this exists in you despite all these presuppositions put on you. I don't know. I don't know.
Yeah. I
But
guess.
the reason I say it maybe ties to the goat thing too, because when Drummond asks if it has verve and
Verb
wiles,
and wiles.
I was
Those
like,
two only.
why those
Mm-hmm.
two?
Mm-hmm.
I think that's why. So just a thought, putting that out there. Anything else?
Mm-mm.
Okay. All right. Let's go on. Next section. So back at the cabin, Mark tries to get his head around what's being asked of him. Cobell explains how the severance chips are attuned to the floor that they're on. And this is going to basically create a bit of a hiccup when he goes down to the testing floor. So he says that once he gets Gemma to the severed floor, Mark S will return and will need to escort her to the exit stairwell. Mark then takes a beat to gather himself and try to understand what is going on. Devin attempts to convince him why this mission is important, try to keep him on mission, stay on track, that getting Gemma and proving Lumen took her could basically be its own undoing, and that it's that important. This poses a problem, however, for Mark S, because that means that it's going to be the end of his existence, along with all of his friends and loved ones that are on the severed floor, right? So neither Devin nor Cobell can tell him that he's wrong about this. They're all trying to push back, but he knows what he knows. And suddenly the weight of this decision becomes very life or death. Do we go for one life and sacrifice countless others on the severed floor? So he's weighing this in his mind. Cobell then reminds Devin and Mark that this doesn't have to be the end of Mark's life, right? Because reintegration is a thing. And then Devin lets him know that there's someone else who wants to talk to Mark. Devin then pulls out a camcorder, hands it to Mark S, and walks to the balcony and opens the door. Cobell then tells Mark to watch his Audi's message, record a response on the camera, and then walk through the door. So this is how we're going to get this conversation between Innie and Audi. So Devin and Cobell exit and leave him to this private conversation. And we have this really interesting back and forth that begins with Audi Mark apologizing for bringing Innie Mark into existence. He believed Lumen when they told him that he would be content, and he blames himself for being the reason that Innie Mark is living a nightmare now, and he wants the chance to make it right. Innie Mark tells Audi Mark that it's not actually a nightmare. He and his friends have actually been making the most of what they've been given, and they find a way to have a whole life down there. And for that reason, this whole idea is a little scary to him. Audi Mark goes on to explain, or at least try to explain, that reintegration is a factor that Audi Mark is going through. And he's trying to get Innie Mark to understand that there's a possibility for him to have a life beyond Lumen. At first, this idea seems intriguing to Innie Mark, but then he has more questions that begin to form and develop, and Audi Mark has less answers to give. So realizing that he's not getting anywhere, Audi Mark moves on to explain how much he has just been grieving Gemma's death. So he's trying to go the sympathy route, right? And then he tries to make the comparison to Innie Mark's relationship with Helena Egan, or as he calls it, Helene, right? Helene is her name. He says it's awesome that he got to have this experience because surely he can now understand why Audi Mark needs to get his wife back. Now it goes back to Innie Mark's perspective, and he corrects him first and foremost by saying, it's Helly. Actually, Helly is the person that I'm in love with. And this conversation quickly makes a 180 with Innie Mark accusing Audi Mark of lying just to save his own wife's skin and stating that he can't really trust him. Audi Mark ends the conversation by calling out to Devin because he is very frustrated by these antics. And Devin and Cobell come in to speak to Audi Mark while he's still on the balcony. And he is just declaring this guy's a child. He won't cooperate. He doesn't believe me about integration. What's his deal? So then Cobell asks to speak with Innie Mark alone. So Devin leaves, goes back downstairs, and Mark re-enters the cabin. So Cobell is there with Innie Mark, and she says, the numbers are your wife. He doesn't quite understand that. So then Cobell walks him through what that means. And she asks him what he sees, how he feels when he's culling the numbers. And Mark begins to explain the emotions that he has when he sees them. She then walks him through the fact that those are indeed the four tempers and that those are the building blocks of Gemma's mind. and that the numbers are a gateway into her mind. So she lets him know that every file that he has completed has been essentially the creation of a new consciousness in her brain, or a new innie. Mark says that he has completed 24 files. What do you mean? And Cobell states that Cold Harbor will be the 25th and the final. Thus, his last day at Lumen will be tomorrow, no matter what. Mark then asks why Cobell is telling him all this, and she can't really answer, but she assures him that he will never get the happy ending that he wants with Helly, because at the end of the day, she's an Egan, and the Egans don't care about him, and they are using him to get what they want. Mark S. is enraged by this, and he storms downstairs past Devin, and she's trying to stop him, figure out what's going on. He turns back and asks her if she loves her brother, and she says yes. And then he says, listen, the next thing I better see is the severed floor, or you can forget about getting Gemma back. So he turns to walk out the door, and before he leaves, Cobell tries to tell him, I care for you, Mark, but he's not having it, exits the building.
So when Audi Mark first starts explaining reintegration to Any Mark, and he's like, well, you would have the memories. You and I would share the same memories, the traumas, but the good stuff too. I was like, so are you just gonna come out and tell him that you cheated on his wife? Cause he gonna get that memory eventually. And it kind of already did, right? And he didn't know it, because that's the memory
The
that
flash,
jarred
yeah.
him into moving when he wasn't supposed to move, even though he didn't know he was supposed to move, because Ragabi didn't prime him about not moving.
Yep.
But I was like, maybe you should tell him that you slept with somebody that's not your wife twice.
At this point, does it matter? Because like you
I
said,
know, but like, let's help the process along then.
like you said, and like Mark said, this kind of mind merge, how does this work, right? Because
Right.
we have lived two very separate lives. You have a wife, I've got a girlfriend. We've been smashing boots on either end. How is this going to work when we both come back together?
Right.
I'm still going to be in love with the person I'm in love with, and you going to want to be with the person you want to be with, and how does that work?
Yeah. And when he asked him, when he, top bottom, you've lived like 20 times longer than I have, wouldn't be mostly you. It was so interesting that Audi Mark was like, no, I don't think it's like that, but he couldn't explain it, because I was like, that's definitely how I've been picturing it this whole time, because
And we've talked about it,
discussed it as like the Audi is the main person. Like, it's going to be the Audi's life, with just, now I can remember what I did on those days that I went to work. It's not going to be the Innie having any sort of decision-making power.
No, because the Innie only has actual presence within the walls of Lumen, right? They don't have their own body. They don't have their own like home life, and everything they've developed is within the confines of Lumen, right?
Right.
Also, I laughed because he said the exact same thing I said to myself, which is when he was like, I don't think it works like that. And I was like, okay, well, how does it work? And then he said, well, how does it work? And I was like, does it work? Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mark.
Oh man, but
it's true.
And again, we have conjectured that across these episodes, right? Like, what does reintegration look like on the other side? Because you've got a person who's lived a whole life up until these few years at Lumen.
Right. And you make a good point. What I was going to say earlier is, you make a good point when you say, they only exist in the confines of the severed floor. That's the only time they have control of their body. So it's not like we are going to merge and we are going to share memories. And it's just, no, I am now going to get your memories. That's all it is. I, the Audi, am going to get your memories. You're not going to have any autonomy. You're not going to have any power. How could they?
And I think in that, and what I loved about the way they played this scene, I say they, it was one person, but I love the way so convincing. I love the way Adam Scott played the scene with the two personas, right? Because it is, I could see Mark S, Any Mark, I could see the wheels turning for him, where it's like, I'm a prisoner either way, right? I don't win in this situation. Without Lumen, I do not win, because you're basically trying to sell me this pitch, right? But all I'm hearing is, we merge, you get your life back, you get your wife back, you get what you want. And I just kind of have to like be in your head existing with no will, desire, or wants of my own that I can enact.
Right. And then I even have the question of like, okay, so do you even still have a consciousness? In reintegration, is your Innie just like a voice in your head? Or is it just the memories that you get back? Because there's, right, if it's even the consciousness that exists in the severed confines of severance, I don't know.
I could see it like it is kind of like this trapped voice in your mind because you've already segmented off and you're just kind of like
Mhm.
smushing them back together. But it's almost like Play-Doh, right? Like there's never going to be yellow and blue again. It's going to just kind of be
Completely again.
flecks of green, right? And so I can see it as like this echo that's just kind of existing amidst the other more predominant consciousness. But I feel like again, it just feels like this shadow voice is just kind of trapped. I feel like it's just kind of there and it's like watching someone else's
Right.
life play out and they don't get to do nothing. Um, but I loved and when we went yesterday to Paley and we got to hear Adam, I think he responded to this question. He mentioned, which I definitely picked on, the condescension that Audi Mark
Hmm.
has in talking to any Mark. And I just sat there and was like, this feels very much like when parents or adults try to talk to a teenager about their first love, right? And
Hmm.
there's a bit of condescension because it's like, oh, you're young, you don't get it. This isn't
Right. You
real
don't know what you
love.
don't know.
You don't know what this
Hmm.
is. I've experienced real love. It's this and it's thousands of days and it's time and da 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 and choices and da da da. What you had was cute, and I'm glad you got to have it. But you didn't have the real. Like it had that
Yeah.
ring, and I just was like, that's not how you would talk to a teen about it. And that like you should always consider their feelings because for them it's just as big and just as important as just as
Yeah.
valuable as your great thousands days love that you're trying to like
Yeah.
put in perspective and give it a hierarchy that is above theirs. Like for him and
Right.
his small amount of time, this is a big thing, right? I had a great love in my very small amount of life, and that's a big deal to me.
Right.
Days don't matter.
That also brings me to my next point in this, which was afterwards when Devin and Cobell come back up to talk to him, and he's like, he's a child, he's calling on the whole reintegration thing. And
Mm-hmm.
Devin was like, I mean, he's not wrong, right? And Mark just kind of like brushes it off. And I was like, okay, so the condescension that was leading him to not trust you is not wrong. His instincts are not wrong, right? Like, you clearly don't plan to finish this, right? Because what point do you have? I mean, or what reason do you have to reintegrate once Gemma is free?
I wasn't sure if she was referencing that because I saw your note and I was like, oh, I
Mhm.
wasn't sure if she was referencing that or just the fact that he doesn't know really and truly how this will play out. Like, you don't have any answers about reintegration. You don't know what this will do. So,
You know what? I see that, but I also, this combined with
mm-hmm,
before the conversation started, I don't know if you noticed that, Cobell had to bring up like, oh,
mm,
your life doesn't have to end.
mm-hmm, mm-hmm,
It,
mm-hmm,
it,
mm-hmm.
it felt to me, Devin was trying to avoid bringing reintegration up. And like maybe the three of them had a discussion before, like this is going to be our selling point, that if we tell him I do this, he will live.
Yeah.
But Devin's like, you're not going to do that.
I do agree that that happened.
Yeah.
Because Devin definitely, of the three of them, had the most like, oh, right. Oh, yeah, I guess we should talk about
Yeah.
this. Like, I think she wasn't fully on board with that. But I feel like you
Yeah.
said, Cobell probably did give him the pitch of like, here's the hard sell. Tell him he's going to get this. Tell him he's going to get that.
Hmm.
Tell him about reintegration so that he knows that he'll still get to be like, I could easily see the sales pitchy
Yeah.
side of this. So you're right. It probably was that as well.
But
Where,
yeah, but also, you are also right. It could be the reasoning that she's hesitant could be either way, right? Either the reason is you're not actually going to do this, or the reason is we have no idea that this works in the way that we're telling him that it works. Yeah.
so either way, we're lying.
Yeah. Either way, it's either a whole lie or it's a partial
Right.
lie.
But I appreciate that she stepped in that moment to speak to the apprehension and kind of be on Mark S's side a little bit. Like,
Hmm.
he's right to be skeptical. He's absolutely right to be skeptical.
Right.
We aren't giving him the whole truth,
Yeah.
whichever way it goes, right?
Right.
So at least we know to some degree that she does
Yeah.
care about Mark independent of this situation. But obviously,
Right.
her concern is still to get Gemma back more than anything. So,
Yeah. And then, to go back to what you said about Audi Mark just digging more and more of a hole. I don't know how much of a difference this would have made, but
mm-hmm,
I was like, oh, that was the perfect time to bring up Petey, and you didn't. I mean, because when he was talking about Gemma, and at one point he said, I thought I could spare you from all of that.
mm-hmm.
But you couldn't, because Petey was reintegrated and told you that your innie is actually really, really sad. Now that would have had to be a partial lie too,
Exactly.
right?
That's where I
Because
was going to go.
telling
Yep.
him how Petey ended would
Exactly.
definitely make it a hard no,
Hard
hard
no.
pass.
Hard
No,
pass.
mm-mm, no.
When
But
you
I was
said
like,
that,
oh, you could have said that much at least.
when you said that, my thought went immediately to, okay, that would have helped unless Mark S was like, oh, where's PD?
Right.
What happened to him? Oh yeah, yeah.
Then he would have had to outright lie. Yeah.
So I feel like they probably omitted it to just be like,
It's murky.
is
Let's
PD
not
is
tread
on
into
his
those
own
waters.
journey. PD is exploring other options in the afterlife. So yeah, that's the only thing I could think, which I was like, that probably would have helped up to a point, unless he asked the question about what came of PD. Okay. Only other thing visually that stood out to me that I found very fascinating. I know we've talked about this before, but the production team is so smart about how they're doing storytelling with the visuals in the show.
Mm,
And so I thought it was so interesting when they went back and forth between Innie Mark and Outie Mark, right? How normally the colors of Lumen and the severed floor are blues and greens and cold tones, right? Outie
mhm.
World is warms and reds and, yellows and stuff. And so we get to see a reverse, right? Where you've got Outie
Yeah.
Mark out in the cold
Out in the
tone
cold.
and Innie
Hmm.
Mark inside, and it shows visually that there's a flip of power, right? Like
Yeah.
usually Outie has all the control, has all the say. For once, the Innie is actually the one who gets to dictate the situation. And I just
Right.
thought the visual there was very interesting to see the reverse, where it's like, oh,
Yeah.
now you get to be the Innie. You gotta
Yeah.
wait for what I gotta say. I don't know. I just
Yeah.
found that very creative. I liked it. I liked it.
Yeah. Yeah. It was nice. The whole time I just kept being like, my God, this must have been a
Freezing.
pain in the no,
Oh,
this must have been, no,
that's
that's
what
not
I
where I was
thought.
going. I was saying this must have been like a pain in the ass to map out, to storyboard it, to, shot list it, whatever process they used.
Mm-hmm.
Because it was so detailed. It was so detailed. And listening to their podcast this morning, even just with the blocking for Innie versus Outie, and like, oh, I'm gonna do these from left to right on this side. I'm gonna do these from right to left when it's this side. It was like
Mm-hmm.
so
Smart.
complicated. So complicated.
This was also the first
Um,
time I could distinctly tell from an acting standpoint what Adam was doing
mhm.
between Innie
Yeah.
and Outie. And I think
Hmm.
it's because this is the first time we're seeing Outie Mark sober. Because I feel like the defining trait for a long time of Outie Mark has been drunk.
Yeah, Outie Mark is just drunk.
Drunk.
Yeah, that's so true.
Drunk
That's
and
so
sad.
true.
So it's like,
Yeah,
oh, now I can actually see what he's doing vocally that's different. Even like his
right.
stature is different. And I was like,
Uh-huh.
oh, okay. Now I see it. Now I
Yeah,
see it.
that's true. Yeah. So in the next little bit, when Mark steps in to talk to Miss Cobell
Mm-hmm.
as Innie, I was like, okay, confirming things that we have been guessing. And you're explaining a lot, but I also still feel like you're not explaining enough. At least if the goal is to convince Mark what
Right.
needs to be done, I don't really know that it matters to any Mark what he's doing to Gemma. I think she had an opportunity to explain more about reintegration,
Mm-hmm.
explain more about like the possibilities. Like, I don't know. I just was like, what is your purpose here right now, Miss Cobell? Just like, I mean, any Mark asked her, like, why are you telling me all of this? And she didn't have an answer for him.
No.
I was like, you're not explaining enough. You're not explaining enough to him. You're not explaining enough to us as the viewer. And it was funny because last night, Paley Fest, Ben Schwartz, one of the questions he asked Patricia Arquette was like something to the effect of, what is kind of next for Cobell, or how did she get to this point where she is now
Right.
against Lumen and ready to bring him down? And she said, is she? And I was like, that's the question. That's the question. The
Exactly.
why are you here? Why are you doing this? What purpose does this serve you? You're not here in service of any Mark, because you could have done a better job of convincing him that this is what he
She
needed
still
to
hasn't told anybody
do.
about the truth about her
Yeah.
creating Severance. And there's a reason
Yeah.
she's holding on to that card. So I'm like,
Yes.
until she done spill the beans about that to somebody, I
Right.
maintain she could potentially still be trying to make a play for control
Hmm.
of Lumen.
Yeah. And why do you care for him? Right? Mark, I care for you on his way out. Why? Because he's still, you said the Egans are using him. He's still a pawn that you need.
Mm-hmm. 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 Don't trust her. Don't trust her.
Mm-mm. Mm-mm-mm.
At the end of the day,
Okay.
like Ragabi said, she is a soldier
Yeah.
that was raised up by Lumen. So
Hmm.
you don't shirk those things easily nor quickly. All right. Anything else? Are you good?
No, I'm good.
All right.
All right. Here we go. Mark awakens on the severed floor as he requested. He exits the elevator and is greeted by a brand new painting in the lobby. Get ready. There's a whole lot to
I
talk about.
love it. I love it.
It features Mark front and center at his desk, culling his numbers almost in ecstasy, as pretty much everyone that we have seen in the show up until this point watches from behind, innies and outies alike. All of this is set in front of the tallest waterfall in the world from the Ortbo, with Helena and all of the former Egan CEOs at the top. As he studies the painting, Helly exits the elevator and they embrace and then hold hands as they study it together. Mark then tells her he has updates to share, but then the lights go out, and one light at a time, their path to MDR is lit. When they arrive at MDR, it's all dark, except there is a statue of Kier standing in the open space in the front where Milchek usually gives his announcement.
Oh, yeah.
The statue has a card in its hand addressed to Mark, which he opens, and it reads, Mark, the founder wished to witness the historic completion of your 25th file. Heliar shall also bear witness from her chair. Goodly splendors await upon your victory. Love, Mr. Milchek. Mark turns the page in the card to reveal a pop-up of a waffle on a plate. Then the lighting in the room shifts again, and it highlights the trio of desks in the center of MDR, clearly telling them get to work. And Mark and Helly take their seats. And as they take their seats, Helly shares that James Egan came to see her and that he said today is a special day. And Mark says that he knows why and what they're doing. So back to the painting.
So painting, talk about it. Because I didn't get a chance to study it, but I was like, oh, this is interesting. All the little tidbits.
Okay, so behind him, so again, like you said, it takes place in the front of the Ortbo waterfall.
The Woes Hollow area. Yeah.
Yeah. And so he is in the center. The waterfall's directly behind him. So on the left stands his MDR team, along with Miss Cobell, Petey on one side, Rickon and Devin holding baby Eleanor. Then behind them are Bert and Felicia and Elizabeth from O&D, and they're joined by that group of the temporary replacement MDR team. Then at the very back, this is the part I'm not 100% sure on, but
I think you're right.
I think it is the attendees of the No Dinner party from the beginning, because the black guy looks like Patton. So I assume that group of four.
It's definitely Patton, and I definitely see Rebecca also.
Okay, yes, yeah, in the glasses, that's Rebecca. Yes. So then it's the dinner party people. So we got to talk about that because like, why? And then on the right side, we have Miss Casey, Milchek, Miss Wong. Then we have behind them, we have Mr. Grainer and Natalie. And then the next row back, we have Lorne, that main goat guy, and Mammalian's Nurturable. Enough people from Mammalian's Nurturable for us to know. And then the personification of Woe. And then also the Shadow MDR team from the Ortbo.
Oh, well, it was all the Tempers, right? Because that's what I saw in the back was like, it was Woe. It was all of them. Frolic, Dread, Malice. Next to Woe, there's the Jester guy. There's the goat guy. And then so it's the Tempers, right?
Yeah. And then there's the Mammalian's Nurturable guy
way in the back.
Very back.
Yeah. Oh, and then the Egan, sorry.
So then on the top of the waterfall, it's James, Helena, and Kier centered, and then all of the past CEOs flanking them. Yeah.
Left to right, it's Ambrose, Myrtle, Baird, then James, then Helena, Kier, Lenora, Philip, and Gerhard Egan. So going back to what you said about the Audi people.
Yeah. I don't understand the dinner party. I don't understand why they're there.
The only thing I can think, but it doesn't make sense still because, well, actually, no, never mind. I was going to say the only thing I can think, actually, no, that still doesn't make sense. I was going to say it must be people that are significant to Mark, since Mark is the one to complete the file. But it would only make sense to his Audi because his Audi knows those people. But then I was like, oh, wait, but Mark did show up at the dinner, Mark S, when they had the OTC. So he does know those people. I don't know. I don't know why.
I mean, he had a conversation with him, but I wouldn't call them significant to him.
No, but they're in his world. I don't know. That's the only thing I've got is somehow they're all loosely connected to Mark. Mark had an experience with them somehow, some way.
But also, he's never interacted with Natalie. And she's there.
And that's
Innie
true.
or outie.
That's true. Yeah.
I don't know. There's a reason that the board thinks all of these people have contributed to his success with Cold Harbor. The reason is unclear because, like, how and the dinner party impact that.
I also love that they put the theremin with
I was like,
Eustace.
oh yeah, I didn't even catch that she was holding the theremin.
Mm-hmm.
But more importantly, they did this painting before it was done. It's a bit presumptive
True.
considering just yesterday, y'all didn't even know if Mark was ever going to come back to work.
I have to know in world who's painting these paintings because they're painting them fast. Unless they just did this long, like midway through Cold Harbor being done.
Well, we did have a whole conversation about whether or not we thought like these paintings were being commissioned
Oh,
and
that's true.
or whether or not that person is severed or not. But now that we've learned about another whole department that is huge later on in this episode, I'm like, they probably have a
A
whole painting
painting
department.
department. That's true.
They probably do. It's
That's
just
true.
severed people, and all they do all day is paint. And they paint the possible things for all of the files and all the possible things. They clearly don't care about painting it before it's happened, right?
Right.
They're not painting historic events. They're painting things that they want to happen in the future too,
Yeah.
not strictly history. So they this may have been painted for a very long time,
That's true.
you know.
That's true. And they just
But
held it
I
in
think they have,
O and
yeah,
D until it was time.
yeah. I think they have, but I think they have a lot of people. I think they got a department down there of painters.
Mm. Okay. I was like, I'm not gonna linger on this, otherwise I'm gonna just keep picking it apart. I don't know why they decided to make the mood so weird for his last day.
Because they're weird.
I mean, yeah. I
Well, and
just
then it makes me wonder, if none of the funny business had occurred before, if any of this would have taken place, or if
mm,
was this all to make sure he did it, right?
maybe that's why.
Like, here are the lights. You're not gonna be running around these hallways. You gotta get your ass to work. Kier himself is watching you in the room where your desk is spotlit.
So get to it.
Get to work.
I guess like you said, they didn't want it to be like a normal day. No adventuring today.
Honestly, if they had stood up, I bet the animatronic would have started talking to them.
That would have been funny to see like with the
Ah,
weird hand.
right. His hand that only did this.
Okay. I don't have anything else.
Yeah, let's move on.
All right. So then we cut to see Mr. Milchick walking through the hallway. He pulls a remote from his pocket that turns the lights back on. He then proceeds to the elevator to meet Dylan, who is shocked to be back on the severed floor. He said no, he states in frustration, as Milchick asks him to follow him to what we will see, the break room. But before he does so, he stops in front of the new painting to observe its ostentatiousness, and we see that it is titled The Exalted Victory of Cold Harbor. I did not notice that, by the way, before you put that.
Oh,
Missed it. But it makes sense because Dylan's always the one that finds the titles. Anyway, we then join Gemma on the testing floor as she goes to open the wardrobe closet containing her persona of the day. She opens it and is overwhelmed to find the outfit is the one she is all too familiar with. They are her clothes, and the last thing that she wore the night of the accident, the night she was parted from Mark. Unsure of whether to be excited or scared, she asks the nurse what's happening, but the nurse tells her to just get dressed and everything will be fine. We then cut back to Helly asking a follow-up question to Mark, who has since filled her in about Gemma. She expresses distrust of Cobell, and Mark agrees, but also says something about her is different, same but different. He is clearly confused and says he could just not finish the file and not get Gemma out because it could all be a lie. But Helly points out that if Cobell is telling the truth, they're screwed either way. Helly urges Mark to finish the file, stating that if his outie is telling the truth, at least he has a chance at a life outside of Lumen. Mark does not like the thought of leaving Helly, but she reminds him that she is, quote, her. At the end of the day, Cobell is right. She's an Egan. They both tear up at this unfair reality, and Mark resumes working the file. We then cut to Dr. Maurer and Dr. Drummond, who watch on as the numbers begin to move in the direction that they have been waiting for. All right. When Helly's telling him about how he should do it and that she's an Egan, and then she was like, you can have a life. And he was like, yeah, but I don't want to have a life without you or something like that. That was the part that got me. They're acting in that
yeah.
moment. I was like, God
Oof,
dog it.
it was so
Dang it.
good.
I was doing so well. I was doing so well.
He had the singular tear and then was like, okay, and started working. I was like, oh Jesus, it was so good.
I always think back to the Denzel tear from what was the movie he did? Glory, where you can just hold it and hold it and hold it, and then
Yeah.
people know how to like time their release.
And be like, whew.
My
Yeah,
waterworks don't work that way. But I noticed how Adam Scott like kept the tears back and they just were glossy in his eyes. And then just that
Hmm.
one fell. And I was like,
Yeah.
ah, dang it.
So good.
Got me.
Yeah.
And same for Britt too.
There,
Like
yeah, her, it was just, it wasn't like streaming. It was just held in there. Yeah.
it's like y'all are good.
But I also was like, thank you, Helly. Thank you for having some sense, being a voice of reason in this time, because what are your options here? Whether Mark is lying, whether Cobell is lying, there's some truth in there somewhere. And
Mm-hmm.
there's not, realistically, there's not a reality in here from the information that you have that would lead you to believe that after today, you have an existence.
Right.
You can't save all of us. You want to. I know you want to save all of us and you want to have a life with me down here, but it's not going to happen. So you
Yeah.
might as well give your other half his wife.
Yeah.
In the meantime, do something with the little bit of time you have left.
I felt so bad because it's definitely like a damned
Yeah.
if you do, damned if you don't situation. Like
Yeah,
we
absolutely.
talked at the top, he's not going to get what he wants. And Cobell even said that you're not going to get what you
You're
want
not.
out of this. This doesn't
Mm-mm.
end well for you. So, with the fact that Helly's outie is an Egan, she can pull the plug at any moment and say, you're done. This is done.
Yeah.
You don't see her again. Lumen's done with you after this. They don't need you. Like it's just there's no win in this situation. And that's gotta suck to be faced with that eventuality and know there's really nothing you can
Yeah.
do about it. Like you said, except for at least give your outie his wife back and do the right thing by him.
Yeah. Also in this segment, when Gemma opened up the closet and saw the outfit, I was like, oh, the people are right. The people have been talking about Cold Harbor being about drowning. Maybe that theory is right because she's wearing the clothes that she drowned in. But then later on, I was like, nope, 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 I was right. Nope, has to do with the baby in the crib. Anyway.
I was just glad it wasn't the one that you mentioned
About like
about her
the
reliving.
miscarriage
I
specifically.
was like,
Yeah.
oh my God. Because I saw the crib. I was like, if
Yeah.
there's a baby in that crib, I'm going to lose it. Or if she has to
Yeah,
like place
no.
a baby in the crib or find the baby or something, I'm not going to like it.
Yeah.
I'm not
And
going to like it.
I'll be honest with you. I think the only reason why it's not that is because I think if they had a way to bypass the time it takes to get pregnant and then have a miscarriage and all that entails,
Mm-hmm.
then they would have her just experience the miscarriage part. Like if they could have her relive the shower scene that we got in her episode, I think they would. But I think the crib, taking apart the crib, was the closest thing to the losing a baby trauma that they could use to test that severance. I'm sorry, we just got so ahead of ourselves. That's not late.
Oh,
That's not
whoops.
now. You know what
Whoops.
I mean?
Whoops.
But that's why I think it's the crib. I think that's the closest thing that they could have used to test
Right.
if that trauma would break severance.
Right. But imagine, so when I rewatched it and that moment happened where she opens the door and sees the clothes,
Mm-hmm.
I could see that there was just kind of this mix of like, should I be excited or should I be scared? Because
Right. Does this mean I'm going
does
home?
exactly. But at the same time, she knows she's got to go to one more room. They told her there's one last room she's got to go to.
Yeah.
Clearly, this is a new outfit. So it's like, wait, is the room me going home? Is the room another weird thing? I could understand where she's just like, whoa, what do I make of
Yeah.
this? And
Mm-hmm.
that's
or she remembers enough of the accident to be afraid of the room being that.
that's true too.
You know, we
That's
don't know
true.
at what point she loses consciousness and
Consciousness.
they take her, you know. So maybe, you know, she remembers like being in the crash, or she remembers like a struggle and thinking she's gonna die, and
Wouldn't
that
it have been
part.
wild if they had her relive a drowning and she comes out of the room
Yeah.
just like soaking wet?
I mean, I thought it was I thought it was very plausible. I thought that theory was very plausible, that that's what this room was gonna be.
Okay. You got anything
Anything else
else?
for that part?
I do
No.
not.
Okay, so we join Milchek and Dylan in the former break room where Milchek delivers the response to Dilly's resignation request from his outie. And Milchek warns him that it may make him embarrassingly emotional, so he's going to leave him to read it alone. And then he so weirdly and abruptly sprints out that room. My gosh, the funniest moment of the series by far. Anyway, Dylan responds with 3 main points. 1, Gretchen is his wife, and kissing her was super messed up. 2, he was jealous to learn that his innie has more confidence than he does. And 3, he likes the idea of his innie existing down there and hopes that he chooses to stay. Right. So there was more to it. It was actually very, you know, warm and self-reflective of outie Dylan. But then we pull out on the resignation request form to see that Dylan's outie neither approved nor denied his request. And so he's truly leaving it up up to any Dylan to decide what he's going to do. And then we see Milchek walking through the halls with purpose as he removes his tie and he unbuttons his collar and he starts to run. He's on a mission somewhere.
This was another moment where I was just like, Zach Cherry.
Mm-hmm.
I love that they're giving him a range of things to explore as an actor, right? Like he's getting to receive, it's another kind of like Mark and Mark situation. You're getting to receive this information from your Audi directly, have a direct interaction with them. They've seen your response to this. Now you get to see theirs. And the processing with that. And just, I love the side by side scenes that we got, seeing how his Audi is processing it. And even just finally hearing from his Audi in a more thought out, complex way. Right.
Right.
I don't know if we had, not that we didn't really have much of an opinion or POV on Audi Dylan, but again, much like Mark, it seemed very kind of basic. Like he's a screw up. He can't keep a job. He's just kind of there. Right. But then you realize like, actually, you know, he's very insecure. He's very, you know, he's very aware of his shortcomings.
Right.
And it is kind of painful to know that there is a part of him somewhere deep inside that can do these things that he seemingly can't, right?
Right. It's interesting because, like you said, we don't know Audi Dylan really at all. And yet this little bit shows us like so much growth in him, right? Because like I said, it was very self-reflective, right? And he could have turned and been bitter and been like, you know, oh, you think you're better than me? Well, you're dead, you know, and right. But he's not. He's like, I need you to stay alive because it's going to push me to be a better person for my wife.
Mm-hmm.
I was like, oh, wow. Look at mature, super mature Dylan.
I will say it does run concurrent to the theme, even though he does give him the out, right? You can leave and whatever. Of like the Audis needing something from their innies, right?
Yeah.
And so, you know, and I thought of that more later on in the episode with Dylan when we see him later, of just like how you still kind of have to make peace with the fact that you are at the behest of your Audi, right? Not the other way around. And how do you square that? Like, I'd like to think I'm living my life on my own terms, but really I'm not. And there's always going to be something that they need from me, and my existence kind of revolves around that. So
yeah, when Dylan first got off of the elevator, I was like, oh no.
I mean, we talked about it.
I was like, wait, we knew that was going to happen. Wait, Callie, what are you talking about? But I just, in his shock, I immediately felt his shock. You know, I was like, right there with him.
Yeah.
But then I really enjoyed this scene. I really liked his Audi's response. I liked, again, how Zach Cherry played it. It was so well done.
I just love his initial response. He said no.
Yeah.
I can't believe this dude screwed me over. It's like,
God damn it.
He did play it so earnestly throughout. I like that he didn't lash out either, or have a freak out, or have a like, put me back down right now. I'm not staying here. Like, he just was like,
yeah.
God now what? Yeah.
Yeah. Because again, he's done this before, you know, and I think it was just kind of like we discussed last time, this was probably the first time since maybe the first time he tried and didn't know any better that he thought it was actually going to work.
Possible, yeah.
You know, and then it's just like, it's like, there's no reason to fight because if it's not going to work this time, there's nothing I can do to make it work.
Yeah. Yeah. The run. Milchick's little runaway was the most cartoony thing I think I've seen a human do. And could have only been supplanted if he ran through a literal wall and made the cartoon outline of himself. Like, it was
so good.
So silly. And I loved every minute of it. And I loved Dylan's response too. Like, what's wrong with it?
What makes me love it more is, you haven't listened to the episode yet, but
no.
Ben Stiller said that it was not planned. So it was a shock to everybody, including the camera. So they didn't know that
that's why it didn't move with him. That's
why it didn't move with him. It made it so much. Then they couldn't have imagined it and planned it that way. And Tramel Tillman only did it the first take, and then that's the take they used.
That's perfect. I was wondering, I was like, was that a choice for the camera not to follow him out?
Not to follow.
Because he literally just ran below frame. And
then it was just like, it's like he gets comically small down the hallway, right? because the camera's not following him.
And I was like, well,
So
that's
good.
interesting. And that's why I was like, oh, they must have wanted it to feel like a Looney Tune, which clearly now I know it wasn't planned, but that was such a good choice to keep it.
So good.
And again, I remembered thinking like, is he running away from Dylan or is he running because he said he's busy and he's got things to do? But then when we see him get out in the hall and he has slowed his pace, but then he picks it back up to go on to the next thing. I was like, oh, you were running away because you was like, this mofo bit me the last time I gave him some bad news. Like,
oh my God, Rodnesha. I didn't even think about that. I just was like, you wanted the hell out of there. He really has something to do. But yeah, no.
He said this man has strong reactions.
He's still real wary of Dylan G and what he's capable of. And that this time there was going to be nobody there to stop Dylan if he went feral on him.
Not going to get me.
That's so funny. Oh, that's hilarious.
And that makes it even more perfect. Oh,
I would love to know the motivation from Tramel Tillman behind that choice. That's so funny.
I think he just gets it. I don't know how else to explain it. Somehow he just knows what the scene needs or requires. He has good instincts and he's keyed into his instincts and he goes on them. And that's really special because then you get moments like these that you can't plan, right? Yeah. Gosh, that was funny. I could watch that over and over. I didn't have much else. Did you? Okay. Yeah. All right. So we return to MDR where Mark and Helly are having a conversation about places other than Delaware. They quickly fall back into the easy rapport that we've seen them have before, and Helly says, I just wish we had more time. Mark then finds his final set of numbers and looks to Helly, who knows from his face that it is time. She walks over to him and leans into him while slipping him Irving's instructions to the black hallway. She puts her hand over his and he gathers the final bit of numbers and bends them, and she says, at least it's a happy one. With the file complete, we get a flash of Gemma's eyes, and then we cut to Mr. Drummond telling Dr. Maurer to call Mr. Egan. We then go back to Helly and Mark, where Mark is getting a much different file completion celebration than we are used to. The lights suddenly go off, and the room is lit with neon green in the doorways and fog coming through the vents. And there's a spotlight that rises up to shine on the Keir statue while the song Serious by the Alan Parsons Project plays. We see that it's not a statue, but another animatronic that begins talking. And Keir praises Mark's accomplishments as one that makes him one of the most important people in history. He then introduces the floor manager, Mr. Milchick, who runs out as if he's about to MC an award show. And I love his little rev up.
Yeah.
Milchick and Keir then have a comedic tete-a-tete, but their roasts of each other quickly get a little too personal after an angrily shaky conclusion. Did you notice the little robot?
Yes.
Mr. Milchick then says, it's time for choreography and merriment. And then he wheels Keir off stage. Sorry, I'm just repicturing all of it. Okay. He wheels Keir off stage and we hear a distant pounding from the halls, one that can even be heard by Dylan in the break room. To everyone's surprise, a Lumen drum line makes its way through the hallways towards MDR. Mr. Milchick joins the drum line inside the MDR room. He's now in a powder blue suit and jacket and wearing the white drum major gloves, and he conducts the drum line's rendition of the Keir hymn. And when it ends, they all shout, Mark! And they lift up little signboards that compile a mosaic that shows a picture of Mark, and it says 100%.
Oh, it's so good. So good.
That's that. All right. Again, we're going back to this very emotive scene. These two are just trying to rip my heart out. Fine.
I just thought it was interesting that she came over and was like, at least it's happy ones, and I was like, oh, remember when Helly couldn't see this
I know.
at all? And now she's a pro because she could see it on somebody else's screen.
And the scenes are parallel, right? Because it was all the other MDR team members around her
over
cheering her
shoulder,
on.
Like, yeah, do you see it? There it is. And she's like, yep.
And she didn't even hesitate.
Got
she's
it
like,
now.
oh yeah, I know what this is.
They're happy numbers, yeah. Oh my gosh.
Yeah, okay, yeah.
Bulls music. The Bulls. I crack up.
I forgot until you mentioned it. And then when they mentioned it last night, I was like, oh, that is the music for the Bulls.
Oh, I immediately was like,
it's been so long.
Not
it's
the
out of my head.
Chicago Bulls. Not Michael Jordan music.
And
What are
so,
they
so now here's my question.
doing?
Does Michael Jordan exist in this world? This
Gotta.
is another moment where I'm like, okay, what reality are we in? Because now we're making Chicago Bulls references. So does this team
Uh-huh.
exist? Does Michael Jordan exist?
Mm-hmm.
Obviously, Milchick,
Mm-hmm.
if they did exist, would know who that is and be keyed in, right? And I'm sure he sees himself as a Jordan-esque figure leading the team to victory. Like,
Mm-hmm.
but now I got questions. So Michael Jordan is real in this world. So
So
he's a
we
real
got,
person.
yeah, we've got the Twilight Zone. We've
Mm-hmm.
got Michael Jordan and the Bulls
Mm-hmm.
exist in this
I know
universe.
there's probably other things that have been referenced too, but I'm just like,
Yeah. Oh, we have like Jane Goodall and save
save
the
the
gorillas
gorillas.
and
Yep.
the chimps and whatever. Yeah.
Starting to wonder, is this a parallel universe? Did time branch off at some point and some things stayed and some things changed? Anyway, yeah. I did find this interesting. I've never really looked at the lyrics for Sirius.
Oh, no, I have not because I've never heard them.
Right. It's normally that intro music,
I
but
did just the intro.
the first few lyrics I saw at the top for the song says, "Don't think sorry is easily said. Don't try turning tables instead. You've taken lots of chances before, but I ain't gonna give you no more. Don't ask me, that's how it goes, because part of me knows what you're thinking. Don't say words you're gonna regret. Don't let the fire rush to your head. I've heard the accusation before, and I ain't gonna take it anymore." And there's more, but I just was like, well, that's very appropriate for Milchick.
Yeah.
I don't know. It just, I was like, I've never thought to look at what the lyrics are for the song because I clearly haven't just sat and listened to the whole thing. But
Yeah.
yeah, someone who ain't going to take it no more.
Mm-hmm.
So that made sense, especially given the little moment that him and Kier have. I was just like, this man has reached his limit.
Yeah.
Okay, who do you think was voicing the Kier animatronic, like in world voicing him? Because clearly it had to be someone who was listening to the conversation and responding. Like it wasn't a preset conversation, right?
Oh, that's so funny. I thought you were like, who? I was like, what do you mean? It's Mark Geller.
No, I know it's Mark
I got
Geller,
you.
but
I
like,
get you.
yeah.
I get you. I get you. I get you. So what I was thinking, now this would mean like they have like AI, but you know, whatever. It's sci-fi. Anything's possible. So
Right.
I was thinking that the pauses were a computer
Processing.
cycling through the possible responses. And
Mm.
so it's like, yeah, there's pre-recorded responses, but also there's no way they could have pre-recorded all of these responses, right? So it's pulling from other recordings that they have of Kier to generate it. It didn't even occur to me that it could be a person doing that. So it could be a person doing that, but I don't know who that would be.
That's what I was trying to figure out. Because like it could be AI, but then that means that you ran a prompt specifically on Milchick to be like, if this guy gets chatty, check him. And if this guy like the interruption of him is where I was like, wait, is someone just on a mic somewhere listening in and doing like the little bits, but then like improvising at different moments to be like, I'm gonna just tell him, put him in his place. Because it feels very Drummondy, but we know it's not Drummond. He's off doing whatever.
Yeah.
So I was like, is this just a maybe management wide thing where nobody really cares for Milchick and they all have something to say? Or is it Dr. Maurer
But Dr. Mauer's already busy.
That's also true.
Or it is Kier's consciousness. It is here.
So Kier don't like Milchick either?
No, none of them do.
This is messed up.
No. Yeah.
Because the shaky part too.
Yeah, well, because I say or it's Kier because I don't mean this seriously, but I was gonna say or it's somebody else from the board, right? And the prevailing theory is that the board is just Kier in a box. So we know the board is at least James, and it's not James either. James can't even speak fast enough. Ain't no way he could.
No,
that man talks so slowly.
If I wrote the fourth,
but yeah, maybe it's somebody else from the board, so they are aware of the feedback that Milchick has already gotten, right? And that's where they're like, "Oh, so verbose."
Yeah.
Which, how do you chastise someone for using words that are verbose with the word verbose? Like, come on, that word itself. Come on. I was just like, why they dogging Milchick from? Kier is dogging Milchick from the beyond,
from the grave,
even. And, we have gone on this journey with Milchick. You brought it up a few episodes ago about like just like still being like, I get it. He's the bad guy kind of, but you don't like the weight that he's carrying, and it's just building more and more. And to the point where this episode, I'm like, Milchick don't deserve this, y'all. Like, what? Y'all are so, and I'm just like, Milchick, and it happened more than one time in this episode, so we'll get to it again later. But I was like, Come on. I've stayed at companies longer than I know they deserved me. But y'all, you should have
You
been
need to
gone,
go,
Milchick.
sir.
You
It's
need to
time to go.
go.
If
You
you're
need
getting
to get
checked by an
out.
animatronic, it's time to leave. It's time to go. That would have been my resignation right there. Like, well, clearly I'm not respected. Let me
Oh,
see my way
so
out.
funny. My last thing about this,
Yes,
when the band came out, I said, "Oh, here's the black people. They do got more black people working here. They're all in the band department, of course.
of course.
Stereotypical. What they got next? They gonna pull out a basketball team, and it's gonna be all black people.
Probably. Okay. Do we want to get into the little snippet? No?
Little snippet.
Sets playlist.
Wait. Oh yes. Oh my gosh, I forgot. I forgot about it. Okay, yeah.
I
So
was
we have a
like,
fun. Yeah, yes. We got a chance to talk to Jamel Tillman at Paley Fest, and Rodnesha asked him a music-related question. So we thought, since there's music in this episode, let's play you guys that question, that clip with the answer. So
we know that Milchick loves an MDE, among other things. So what we want to know is, what do you think is on Seth Milchick's personal playlist?
Ooh, I think he's a big fan of John Coltrane.
Okay.
Thelonious Monk. I also think he's like funk, like he like P-funk, Parliament.
Yeah,
You know, I think he's
Parliament.
down with that.
Yes.
I think he has a great taste in music.
I honestly, I believe that. I believe that. So far, I've not been disappointed by the choices, so I trust.
So yeah, Seth Milchick. I mean,
Coltrane. He's a Coltrane man.
it and like we said, it makes sense. It definitely tracks. It with the he didn't choose the song for MDE, but he got down to it. Like that's the one I wanted you to pick. And then with the marching band, it all makes sense.
It
It tracks.
all makes sense. Okay. Before we move on, the only other thing I want to say is, okay, Milchick was a lib arts major, right? Or a theater major or something? Because
Had to be.
I'm convinced the way this whole little situation is set up, the spotlight, the Johnny Carson of it all, like I feel like this man is like, this is the only way I'm gonna get to outlet my creative side. Like I can be a manager, but I can also, make it fun and razzle dazzle. Like everything that Milchick does has to be a production. And I'm like,
Yes.
so theater major?
Yeah. Definitely a theater kid. Milchick's definitely a theater kid.
It's funny at this point.
The idea that part of Milchick's days has been going to choreography and merriment and rehearsing with them just tickles me.
You're right.
In preparation for this, it had to.
Is it on the clock or off the clock? Because you got to rehearse with the band, right? Do they come in during normal hours or after hours?
Oh, right. Because, and I say this later in my notes, but I'll say it now, because when he first said choreography and merriment, I thought it was just his way of saying, and now for some musical entertainment, right? I didn't think he was announcing a department.
Right.
And then when later on he called off the department and go back to your department, I was like, oh, this is another department. So what's the soundproofing like in their department? Or are they a night crew? Do they come in and practice? Because we heard them down the halls clearly. So I'm like, are they in their actual department is like really make sure nobody can hear them?
It
So
must
they're
be
just
soundproof.
practicing all day? Yeah, must be. Or like you just brought up, like, is it after hours? Are they on the night shift? And is Milchick coming in what's normally off the clock for him the last month or so, whatever, to rehearse with
He said,
them?
all right, CNM, I have some ideas.
Love it.
Have some
I love
thoughts.
it so much.
And I will get into more of
Yeah.
that in the next segment. But was there anything else up here?
Mm-mm.
Okay.
Oh, it's my turn again. Okay, here we go. So we hear an elevator ding, and we see James Egan arrive at a very small room with just a desk and a computer and a little framed picture of Kier above it. And this elevator lets him out directly into the room. Then, as Gemma and the nurse walk through the testing floor halls, James takes his seat at the computer, and the computer welcomes him to the efficacy test and says that it will start shortly. In MDR, Milchick wants to keep the Mark S. love going, and he leads the band in all of his drum major glory in the Ballad of Ambrose and Gunnell. Mark grows more and more nervous because he knows he has to figure out a way out of MDR to move forward with the rest of the plan to save Gemma. And so as Milchek performs around the whole room, Helly asks Mark if he's ready. And then he's like, yeah, I guess. Like, he doesn't know what's in store. And she creates a diversion for Mark by taking Milchek's radio and running to the bathroom. And as Mark exits MDR and begins to run, Helly tricks Milchek into thinking that she's in one of the stalls. She puts his radio in the toilet and flushes it. Then she quickly runs out of the bathroom and holds onto the door with all of her might, effectively blocking Milchek in the bathroom. To the beat of the drums, we see Dylan walking through the halls, and then we cut to Mr. Drummond walking out of the black hallway, and Mr. Drummond then slams with both of his hands on the wall directly opposite of the entrance to the black hallway, and we see from the side that it's an entrance to a secret room. Meanwhile, Mark continues to run through the hallways, and as the music turns from the happy drum line and switches to a more ominous score, the nurse continues to direct Gemma to the cold harbor room.
I could not have been more happy. I thought maybe we were just going to get the one song and then we got a second. And I was like,
a second one, and it was full and it was lush, and the drum majory. Oh, I said drum major Milchek can get it. It was so good. He was living his best life. I was literally up inches away from my TV dancing with him when I watched this. Oh, so good.
What I loved, and I have so many thoughts about what I loved about the two band moments, the two different band songs.
Yes.
This is a little bit of story time side tangent. I was a drum major in high school.
Yes!
I tested my sophomore year. I was a drum major my junior and senior year. Most of the time, people only get it their senior year. That's what it is. So I did it for 2 years. I distinctly remember when I went to, they have a camp that you go to. It's a drum major camp in the summer. And I remember being like, oh, this is so exciting. Da, da, da. And it was my first exposure because it's all the drum majors in the city of Houston. I lived in North Houston, suburbs, white kids. Even though we're in high school at this point, I'll make the distinction of PWI versus HBCU. PWI being predominantly white institutions, HBCU being historically Black colleges and universities. So I'm at the camp. I'm doing my little tweet. Yeah. Learning the very like prim, army band type of conducting and leading and da da da. And then I got to see the Black kids come from the Black schools and do all the body rolls and we've got the batons and we're doing showmanship. And I was like, what is happening? What is this? This is so exciting. I've never seen anything like this. And again, because I'm growing up in a suburban area, going to a predominantly white school. This is all I've seen. I had no idea. And what I loved more than anything was that I got to hang out with those kids. I got to learn that style of drum majoring. I never got to use it. Unfortunately, I got to use it in the stands a little bit, but not on the field because, the white folks weren't having that. But I loved every time we got to go to camp, and that would be my time to get to kind of tune in with that. So what I loved was seeing that they did both styles. And again, it speaks to this code switching that Milchek has to constantly do. He did the first one where he came out, white gloves, very upright, dot, 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 dot. We're keeping time. We're just leading. And then the second one, he said, okay, this is me. And I was like, yes.
Yeah.
Yes. Because I thought they were only going to do it the one way. And I was like, okay. It was fun either way. But I was just like, oh, I love this is Milchek. And again, we keep trying to say, are we making it too racial? But they are making it racial because
they're doing it.
That is a very distinct code switching thing that you have to do. And again, from the drum majors I knew who were Black and in predominantly white schools, it's like, man, I wish we could do this, but we can't. We're not allowed. It's whatever the reasons. But then we have this moment where we get to go over here and we get to kind of like be in that just for a little window of time. And then we got to chuck it back in our little pockets and go back and tweet. But I don't know, I connected with that moment very much so. I think maybe in another form or life, I was Seth Milchek. I don't know what's going on. There's too many like connecting points I'm having with this man. But yeah, I just had to shout that out because I was like, this is too real. This is too real.
That is such a great call out, Rodnesha. It's so good. Like I noticed it, but not to the point. You know what I mean? Like absolutely. It's like the Toros versus the Clovers. It's like, same, but so different.
Yep.
And
Yep.
he's like, I can do both. Get you someone who
Who
could
can
do
do
both.
both right there. And I found it interesting too, the different songs, right? So we're upright and prim during Kier Chosen One, because
The hymn.
but then it's like, oh, the ballad of Ambrose and Gunnel, we gonna get gully. We
Yeah.
gonna get in the pocket for this one. But I just was so happy to see that. And if it spoke to nobody else, it spoke to me as
Yeah.
a former drum major in a PWI who wishes she could have been on the field of an HBCU.
It's just more and more things. Anytime something like this comes up, I'm just like, God dang, I wanna talk to Tramel about it too. I want to talk to him about it.
I do want to talk to Tramel so much.
Yeah.
My first question will be, did you know that you are my, I don't want to say spirit animal, but like
Your
form of
kindred
that.
spirits.
Kindred spirit. Thank you. Yes, 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 yes. Okay. The only other thing, like I said, that I want to mention is this ballad, right? Because as soon as they said the ballad of Ambrose and Gunnel, I was like, what does this mean?
Yeah.
It means something. I think Ambrose Egan is going to be an important player somehow in all of this.
Gunnel, right? It's the Gunnel Egan empathy.
Yes.
Right, but I'm saying Gunnel is who's come up twice, right?
Well, Ambrose has too, but yes.
Where was Ambrose again?
Ambrose was mentioned earlier this season because I remember asking about him because I was like, isn't he the one that Irving talked about being the outcast? We had talked about that. I don't remember which episode, but it was another one.
Oh, I don't remember that. Oh yeah. No, I don't remember that. I thought you were just misspeaking because the Gunnel Empathy Center in last episode. Oh, both of them. Okay.
And so Ambrose, again, he keeps getting brought up, and I always think back to that one moment Irving was talking when they were going to perpetuity, and he's like, Ambrose was always the black sheep, and I feel like that was he was unfairly maligned.
Season, yes.
And then he got brought up again at some point this season. I was like, they're talking about him again. I was like, what's the story with Ambrose? Because he had the shortest stint as a CEO. You didn't hear nothing else about him. And then now we've brought up Gunnel twice. And so last episode, we were like, who the heck is Gunnel Egan? So one thing I did look up, and I actually heard this during last episode, but it was after we recorded. Gunnel Egan is actually a female name. So it's a lady, and it means battle maid or battle woman. It's like a Norse name. So now I have all these questions. I was like, I saw some chatter that perhaps Gunnel Egan might have been the wife of Ambrose Egan.
That's what I was going to ask. Yeah.
Makes also sense now why she has a empathy center name for her in Norway, North Pole, whatever. I don't know. Something is there. I was like, I don't know what this is, but somehow, some way, this has shaped something in the Egan lore and history where like, I don't know. I'm trying to put pieces together, but there's not a lot that I have other than Ambrose was the black sheep and the outcast. He had the shortest stint as a CEO. We now know that Gunnel was a woman and perhaps his wife or maybe somebody else's wife. I don't know.
Interesting.
Yeah. So I'm like, I'm going to figure this out. This is now in my brain. This is the new vending machine. I'm going to have a weird obsession with Ambrose Egan and I'm gonna figure it out. But yeah, so I just wanted to throw that out there because now they have a ballad also. And I noticed that the ballad also sounded very, like we said with the song that Dr. Maurer was whistling when he went to, it felt very sea shanty-esque.
Yeah.
So I feel like sea shanties don't tend to be very happy songs.
Right. Yeah. So like, yeah, what are the lyrics to this ballad? Yeah.
Anyway, something to keep your eye on as things go further. Caught my attention. Okay, that's it. That's all I got for that part.
Okay.
All right. So next, we see Lauren as she pushes a baby goat in a basket down the hallway, and she is dressed like a milkmaid going to a funeral. We cut back to Helly and Milchick fighting at the bathroom door. She struggles to keep the door closed. She's pulling on it from one side. He's pulling at it from the other. And then they finally let it go, and it sends Milchick flying backwards into the bathroom and Helly flying in the other direction. He then gets up and asks her, where is Mark S? And she says she doesn't know. And right as he's about to shoot outside, we see Dylan come barreling through the screen, and he's screaming and pushing the vending machine. The vending machine is the hero of this story, you guys. The vending machine. It all connects. He's pushing the vending machine into the doorway, keeps Milchick in the bathroom. As Milchick starts trying to kick the vending machine down, the nurse is with Gemma and she lets her into the Cold Harbor room. Same old finger pricky thing. Now you can actually see all the spots on her finger too. I thought that was crazy.
Yeah.
As she enters, we see that Gemma encompasses a brand new Innie who is hesitant at the front of the room. And then we hear Dr. Mauer's voice come over the PA, and he tells her to enter the room. In the center of the room, we see a lone crib, just like the one that Gemma and Mark had when they thought they were expecting. And James looks on with excitement, and we see that the efficacy test is about to begin. The vending machine. You guys thought I was crazy for being so on this vending machine. And guess what? It's the hero of the story. Actually, it's appropriate that Dylan pushed the vending machine.
It's so appropriate that it was Dylan in the vending machine, and then Zach Cherry had this to say about it.
We know Dylan is really into the perks, so this is specifically for you. Is there any, if you could add any perk to the severed floor for the innies, what would it be?
I wasn't and I was probably never going to be in this season.
Food in the vending machine is a little weird. It's like dried meats and like dehydrated better.
Yeah.
You know what? I would be totally on board with Dylan getting to design what the food landscape is going to be, because I trust. I mean, Dylan's been surveying. I trust judgment.
He's picky about it, and he has thoughts.
But I think rightfully so. Like you said, dried meat. What are we doing? So that clip was amazing. I'm so glad we got to ask him that question. And I'm glad that he has put as much thoughtfulness into the vending machines as I have. I felt very validated in that moment.
Yes.
Very much so. See, it's important, guys. It's important. Okay. You and Lauren, you had made a note about Lauren. I skipped over it.
So Lauren, she was just all done up, and I was like, did she put her makeup on with the goats? Is she in the room with the goats? Did she move to someplace else? Because it's not very sanitary to be putting your makeup on around farm animals. But I was
That's
like,
true.
you got makeup in there. I mean, she did have a lot of makeup on when we saw her first. She had makeup on when we saw her first, but it was different. But like, she's really done up.
Yes,
Done
it was
up
very
for this
goth.
Yeah.
It was giving 18th century Victorian. I couldn't tell. Did her hair look darker to you, or am I just tripping? Is it the lighting? I couldn't tell.
Yeah, it didn't feel lighter to me, but I mean, the majority of it is covered the first time we see her, so maybe that's
why. Also, based on your note that I just saw, love that we got to see this live and have the moment with Dylan.
Oh, yes. Yeah, I was just like looking around. It was like the moments you prepared me for, right? You're like, oh, just wait. And when it's so exciting when everyone starts cheering for the same things. And when he came running through with the vending machine and the whole audience was like, yes, yes. I love this so much.
Okay. Was there anything else? Okay.
Ready. So Lauren arrives with the goat at the secret room where Mr. Drummond meets her with questions about the goat. Has it verve? Wiles? Lauren assures him that this is the best of his flock and he's up to the task at hand, whatever it may be. And they enter the room, which is completely tiled for easy cleanup. It has a sink on the right and what looks like a tomb in the center. I forgot to make notes about what's on it, but we can talk about it.
Yeah.
And Mr. Drummond tells Lauren that the goat will be buried with Gemma. He doesn't name her, but we know it's Gemma, so that it may guide her spirit to Kier. He then pulls a gun from a case that is embedded in the wall, and he retrieves one bullet from a bullet dispenser. And then he loads the gun, and he tells Lauren to give me its life.
Ugh.
Back in the cold harbor room, Gemma walks towards the crib where a screwdriver lays alone on the mattress, and Dr. Mauer tells her, take it apart. Then we go back to MDR, and Milchek is fighting for his life to get out of this bathroom, but the vending machine barrier is holding. Mark finally arrives at the black hallway just as Mr. Drummond is handing the gun to Lauren. The goat is now in the tomb and has his little head popped out looking at her. And Mark tries his key card in the door, but it doesn't work. So he starts banging on it, trying to force it open. Then he sees the vent above it and he starts to try to shimmy his way up to get in the vent. And as Lauren aims the gun at the goat's head inside the room opposite him, she asks how many goats she'll have to give. And Mr. Drummond tells her basically as many as Kier calls. Then they hear Mark's commotion that he's making outside trying to get into the black hallway. And Mr. Drummond gives the signal for Lauren to wait while he checks on it. When Mr. Drummond sees Mark, he says his name, and Mark immediately knows he's in trouble, and he tries to quickly make up an excuse to leave, but A struggle between them ensues. Mark puts up as good a fight as he can, given Mr. Drummond, but he's clearly no match. And Mr. Drummond gets him on the ground and he straddles him and begins to choke him. And as Mark is grasping at his hands, trying to free himself, slowly losing his life, Lauren appears and puts the gun to Mr. Drummond's head. This is another cheer moment at Paley Fest where everyone went wild. And Mr. Drummond knocks the gun out of Lauren's hand, and then they begin to tussle. But Lauren is a much better match for him than Mark was. And she gets him on the floor long enough to regain control of the situation, and she gets the gun. And just as she's about to finish him off, Mark yells out to her to stop.
Ooh. All right. All right, this goat room.
Yeah.
You had the same thought I did, which was, suspiciously all tile. Why would that be?
Yeah, I was like, oh, this is the slaughterhouse. Oh no. Even the ceiling style? Ew. Oh no. So they could just hose it down. There's probably a drain in the center that they didn't show.
Probably. Other thing I noted before he even got over that you could see it on the wall. And I was like, Chekhov's gun. It's going to go off at some point. I don't know who or how, but you don't just show a gun unless you prepared to shoot a gun. Apparently that's the rule. But it was so bizarre. Did you get to look up close to see what all the markings were?
So they showed it again. I didn't. I was going to Google it really fast, but I didn't because I didn't take screenshots of it. But they do show the close-ups of it. One was a goat. It looked like approaching like a hill or something. Another one was a goat turned upside down. I was like, oh, the goat's dead. And then another one was like a goat and like a sunrise or something. So I was like, this is like
Goat
hieroglyphics
heaven?
of what's going to happen to the goat. Yeah,
Okay.
the goat is being led to its death and then sacrificed and then doing whatever it's supposed to do in the afterlife, right? Doing what Mr. Drummond just said he's going to do, I guess. But so it brings me to my question of what the is happening with the goats? Ben Schwartz asked the same thing. It was so funny.
He did.
I was like, wait a minute. We were promised an answer. This is not an answer.
We
This
got
is not
an answer. It's not a comprehensive.
okay. Okay, semantics. Okay. This ain't no answer. Right? Okay, so why goats? Why goats? We know what they're going to do with the goat. They're going to kill it. They're sacrificing it. Why do they think goats are the vessel to bring people to cure, spirits to cure? Why do they need to bring spirits to cure? There's no answer. What?
Okay, I may have an answer because I looked something up today. I am with you because I'm like, okay, this was an answer. It was not a comprehensive nor complete answer. I hear you. And so thus I was like, all right, what is it about goats? And I know a lot of people have like thrown theories out there like goats are tied to the occult and satanic and this, that, and the other, which I'm like, I feel like it's probably more comprehensive than that. That seems like a very base explanation. One thing that I found today that I thought was interesting, because I was like, is there any type of specifically goat sacrifice? And if so, what does it usually symbolize? A lot of stuff that came up was just generally like animal sacrifice through different cultures and throughout time and what that represented, but not specific to goats. But it's usually herding animals of some kind. I did find one thing where someone said that goats as an animal are usually symbolic of individualism. Because the goat symbolizes individualism, it's the antithesis of a sheep, right?
Okay.
So sheep are usually, they follow the other, they're herding animals, they do what the other one does. They'll follow one off of a cliff even because they're so just herd mentality, whereas goats are very solitary and individualistic, almost stubbornly so. So going back to what we said about seeing Kier in somebody, I was like, does Kier specifically identify with goats because they stand on their own, they're individuals?
Yeah.
That type of thing. I don't know if it's just something that he personally just feels connected to, and that's why it's so ritualistically tied to everything, Lumen.
Sure. So, that's why you really like goats, Kier. Why do you think they're doing stuff for you in the afterlife, though? That's still, you know what I mean?
I mean, that could just be because, certain cultures do have animals that they just decide this is going to be my afterlife animal. You know what I mean? Like Egyptians, like cats or whatever. That
with you, so it'll be with you. Sure.
Well, no. But like for example, Egyptians, I believe, believed that cats were like guardians of the afterlife or the underworld. Like, I don't know if he believes that goats have a afterlife purpose. I feel like there's another animal that does ferry you or does like escort you into the afterlife. And I don't know if he just decided to use someone else's religious whatever and just substituted goats instead of whatever. I don't know.
It's like the hippo lady in
oh yeah. I know what you're talking about. Shoot, what's that show?
Ooh, tip of the tongue, the teeth, the lips that didn't get renewed.
Moon Knight.
Moon Knight. Anyway, yeah, it's like the hippo lady. Anyway, I hear you. I do.
I don't know if that's, again, that may not be the full answer. That may not be the whole answer, but I'm like, I don't know if it's just his way of developing his ideology and he's centering it around goats instead of whatever somebody else has used.
Yeah.
Unless maybe he had some encounter with a goat. I don't know. I don't know.
Yeah. I do hope. Ew. When you said, I know you didn't intend this when you said encounter, but now I'm just remembering the
No.
You know what I mean? The fourth appendix, and I'm like, I don't need to say it. Y'all know what I mean.
I hope it's not that kind of encounter.
Yeah, I hope it's not that either. I will say, I hope this is enough of an answer to stop the clone discussions, because I'm tired of it.
I hope so too. I am over that. It's not cloning, you guys. It's not cloning.
It's not.
Yeah, hopefully that clears that up. Hopefully that leaves that. I'm sure some people are still going to hold on to that theory.
Like that video you sent me of the guy saying all the reasons why Rickon is a goat that are just ridiculous.
I had to send it to you. I was like, I need someone else to see this besides me. This is ridiculous. Yeah. How many folks have they killed down there and buried a goat with?
Oh, yeah, right. So do they only sacrifice the goat for this, or do they sacrifice it for other reasons? And she's had to sacrifice many, and it doesn't necessarily mean there's been as many people sacrificed?
I don't know.
Or is it a goat and a human every time? And if it's a goat and a human every time, have they also used innies for similar purposes, right? And like, there's pre-Gemma, there was somebody else who had a bunch of different innies and a bunch of different tests that they had to pass, and when the tests were over, they were done.
Don't know, but this does not inspire much confidence that wasn't the case. So couple that with the information about Irving tracking disappearances.
Right. She said no more killing. She'd been doing it a lot. Trauma.
Enough to make her go berserk, which, sidebar, I know, and Gwendolyn Christie talked about it last night at Paley. I know she is like far and away removed from Game of Thrones. She did her time, But when this scene happened, this fight scene in the hall, I said, there she is. There's the Gwendolyn Christie I know and love. There she is, just this Amazonian goddess of a woman, just flinging fools left and right. I loved it. Now, I know that probably wasn't what she thought she was going to get into when she signed up for this. I don't know, but I loved it. We've talked about this before. She has such an ethereal face, right? But then she also has like this visceral nature. And when she started going toe to toe with Drummond, and when she had that one scream moment, I just was like, God, I'm scared. Like, I'm not even fighting you. I'd be scared.
I was screaming through this whole thing because, you know, when Drummond, before she comes out, when Drummond was on top of Mark, I was like, come out the room, Lauren. Come out the room, Lauren. Get your ass out that room. Come on, girl. Come on. You're taking too long.
Somebody tap on the door. Hey.
Yeah. And she comes and I'm cheering. I'm like, yes. And I'm like, it's always my like quiet screams because I'm in a house full of people asleep and I'm like, try not to wake anybody up. I'm like, yes. And then, you know, Drummond knocks her back, and then they have a moment before the fight starts, right before she screams and goes at him, and they're both like, "Are we about to do this? Yeah, we about to do this." And I was like, "You can take her. You can take her. You can take him. You can take him, Lauren. You can take him." So good.
Oh, I had no doubt. I was like, if this ends with her dead, I don't believe anything about this show, because this woman can definitely take this man. And again, she's got anger on her side and betrayal and whatever else.
Right. Because when she pulled the gun on him the second time, I was like, she didn't need to do that, because she was literally just like wailing on him. Like she would have killed him if she kept going.
Oh, yeah.
Just with her bare hands.
All right. Well, shall we move on?
Yes.
Okay. So James and Dr. Maurer watch from their separate rooms as Gemma takes apart the crib. Dr. Maurer is in awe of the severance barriers still holding. Mark enters the black hallway with Mr. Drummond at gunpoint, while Lauren looks on from the doorway with her baby goat in her arms. So cute. And when they enter the elevator, Mark tells Mr. Drummond that when his Audi wakes up, he's going to ... He's basically explaining like, okay, here's the situation. Unfortunately, you know, chip activates on the way down, body relaxes, and whoopsie, trigger. Neck. Pleh, pleh, pleh. So we hear the elevator ding, and Mark is mid switch and his body is tensing. And unfortunately, he pulls the trigger and shoots Mr. Drummond in the neck. It is gross. It is bloody. It is awesome. Howdy Mark awakes to see Mr. Drummond's blood spewing all over him, which that part is gross and would be terrifying. But the elevator doors open onto the testing floor, and Drummond falls dead on the ground, just full body to the floor. Mark then steps over his body, gun still in hand, just kind of like, what's going on? But then gets over it and begins to cautiously wander down the testing floor hallway. He's trying to make sense of where he is. He comes to a room that's labeled Minsk, and then all of a sudden he has an idea of what to do. So he's got to find the room labeled He has to find the room labeled Cold Harbor. Back up in MDR, Milchick is still ramming into the vending machine from the bathroom with all his might while the drum line is going. Milchick then decides to climb on top of the vending machine because he sees a little gap up above it, and he peers over the top, and then Helly realizes what he's doing and thinks he might actually be able to fit through there, so she steals a trombone and rams it into Milchick's head. And that's when we get that one guy whose name I can't say, who's like, hey, those are official CNM for the what is it called? I was about to say music dance. For the
choreography and merriment.
And merriment, blah, blah, blah. That was his line. Mark continues to look for the Cold Harbor room. Helly and Dylan start taking more instruments to fill up the space. They've got euphoniums and all sorts of stuff shoved up in there. We cut between flashes of Mark searching, Gemma building, and Helly barricading until Milchick stands up and yells from the bathroom for the choreography and merriment to go back to their department. The music dance experience is over. Bringing it back. As CNM start to leave, Helly runs to the center of the room and pleads for them to stay, much like Helena did at the Mammalians Nurturable little conference they had. Helly rallies the troops by telling them what happened to Irving. She says there used to be a fourth desk here, and they just made him disappear, and this could happen to any one of them. During her speech, Mark finds the Cold Harbor room. All right. So Dr. Maurer, boy, just a creep. All these creeps running this freaking company. Just the way he was saying everything like, the barrier is holding. It's beautiful. I was like, oh, please stop talking.
Very fetishy.
Yes.
It just continues the creepiness that we got in Gemma's episode, right? Where he is slowly falling in love with her, and it's so inappropriate and gross.
And again, because you know what this scenario is rooted in, you're watching her take apart this crib and you're like getting off on it in a way. It just, hate it.
Yeah, it's like this man definitely likes like snuff films because he knows at the end of it she's gonna die, and he's like excited as it builds towards that. It's gross.
Yeah, I don't like it. He probably does. The Drummond moment. I didn't think it was going to happen quite like that. I knew somebody was going to get shot. I knew that gun was going to go off. And as soon as he pointed it to his neck, I said, well, now wait a minute. Why would you put it there? And then he said, cut. I was like, didn't think it through. Mid-sentence, he's like, here's what's going to happen. I'm going to change to my Audi, and then, pop.
Didn't realize how quick this elevator ride is. Yeah. I just thought it was at his neck because he's so much shorter than him.
Okay.
Right? If it was like a,
fair.
Normally you would point it at his head, but
he's a large man.
He would be like real reaching. Yeah.
And it's such a vascular area too. I was just
It was, oh my gosh. It was just
that's
like
nasty.
Major artery in your face, viewing everywhere.
And the way that gun is too, like it has a barb, because clearly it's for like putting animals down, right? Yeah. And they usually have that barb that's supposed to go through their temple so that just like immediately puts them out. So when he pulled it out and you just see it all retract out, I was like,
yeah. Oh yeah. It was gross.
Another nasty moment. Y'all giving nasty moments all season.
It was so gross. And it was just like so unexpected. It was so funny. This was in the viewing, we were seated next to another member of the press, and she was someone who had not really watched the show. It was like just her assignment to cover all of Paley Fest. So some of the things she had seen, some of the things she hadn't. So she had read up, and she didn't know what was coming. She had read about the finale. She knew that she was about to watch the Drumline episode.
Right.
And then when this part happened over, she was already like checked out. Like, because how do you get in? Rodnesha and I discussed this after, like, how do you get into a show at the end? Like, she's only watched clips so she could ask people questions, but she hasn't watched enough, right? So she was kind of bored. And then and then this happened and she was like, oh, and she put her hands over her head and then she stayed on her phone the rest of the
She said, I
episode.
didn't come here for a horror show. What is
And I
this?
was like, no, truly, because even as viewers, we had no reason to believe that there would ever be anything gory like this. Like even when Ragabi murders Mr. Grainer
Oh
in the
yeah, you don't
first
see it.
season,
Yeah.
it's not bloody and gross like that. You know what I mean? We just see their reaction to that, so we assume that it is, right? We see Mark is trying to hold back vomiting, but
Mm-hmm.
yeah, so it's so unexpected. Like, this is an office comedy? What? Like, if you don't know anything about the show, you just know
Yeah.
basic, minimal. This is
Yeah.
so unexpected.
Plus, this episode swings so far emotionally to the left and
Mm-hmm.
the right, where it's like we're laughing, now we're crying, now people are getting murdered and slaughters. And
Mm-hmm.
what is this show? I can only imagine. That's funny. Okay, you said you had an art reference.
Yeah, so an art reference, fun little art reference. We haven't had one in a little bit.
No.
When they are in the hallway, in the black hallway, Mark turns to thank Lauren for helping, and Lauren says, "Emile thanks you." Emile is the name of the goat, and then she's left with
Mm-hmm.
Mark's response is so funny
He's
though,
like,
like, oh,
okay, yeah.
okay, cool. But so the name of the goat, I believe is an art. If it's not, it's a hell of a coincidence. But there
Okay.
is a French artist named Emile Meunier who is known for painting goats. And
Oh.
he paints goats with like young women. Um,
Oh. Wait, I'm looking up right now.
so it's like young child and goat in the flowers and goats on the pasture and baby with goat. It's just a lot of goats.
That can't be a coincidence. That has to
Do
be
you see it?
because
Yeah.
when you said art reference, I was like, I don't remember any art. Where was
There's
the
no
art?
artwork here. No, but
Oh no, this has to be.
but
Yeah, yeah. This has to
yeah.
be, especially since she was holding the goat. Yeah,
Yeah.
for sure.
Attention to detail. It's like there's so many things that like only a small fraction of the viewers are going to get because they're so specific, but they've got something for everybody. They've got a reference in there
Wow.
somewhere for everybody, no matter what your side interest is.
That's true.
So,
You're actually right.
it's incredible attention to detail on this
Good
show. We've said it
catch.
before, but my God.
Good catch. I knew there was something significant about that moment because of the
About the
way they
name.
hung on it and shot
Yeah.
it. But I just was like, I don't get it. I just was like, oh, much like Mark, I was like, okay,
Yeah.
sure, all right. But that's a good catch. Oh my gosh, I like that. The only other thing that got me was when they started snatching instruments, and I immediately was brought back to my band days where, like, if anything happened to your instrument, your band instructor would go berserk. And I was just like,
So
you can't just be shoving the instruments up there. They're expensive. Like,
them's expensive. That's gonna come out of my check.
I would have been hot. And I think I just was thinking as the performers are like the players, I'm like, y'all just let her snatch your instruments away and shove them in a hole. I'd be like,
funny.
hey, I gotta pay for that. That comes out of my check. Like, I had a very visceral moment where I was like, no. Like, I get what you're trying to do, but not the instruments. That's it. That's all I had.
That's so funny. That's really funny. Okay, here we go. As Mark approaches the Cold Harbor room, the nurse steps into the hallway and asks how he got there. He points the gun at her and tells her to open the door, and they enter a brief yelling match where she's just like, that gun is not going to scare me, basically. And then she says, "F you," and she runs off to get Dr. Maurer. And then Mark places his hand on that entry lock to try to get in and then realizes that it pricked him. He looks down at the blood on his tie, gets an idea. He places his hand back on the reader, but this time he puts the tip of the tie on his finger, and the door reads Mr. Drummond's blood and lets him in. Mark softly calls out to Gemma, and she turns and she's frightened, and he quickly realizes that this is a version of her that doesn't know him. And so he steps into camera view, and we cut between panic on the faces of Dr. Maurer and James as they watch what's unfolding. Mark edges closer and closer to Gemma as he begins to explain that they are married and she needs to come with him. And Dr. Maurer tells her not to go with him, not to let him touch her, and this is not a part of the test. But Gemma takes Mark's hand and goes with him. Dr. Maurer runs out of the room that he was watching from just as the nurse is arriving to get him, and she screams, "It's the spouse!" Mark exits the room first and then assures Gemma's innie that it's okay. And she steps out, and then Gemma returns. And the two of them have an emotional reunion. But it's short lived because an alarm is sounded and they have to run. So back in MDR, Dylan and Helly and Milchek hear the alarm. We just get their reactions to the alarm. And then Gemma and Mark run to the elevator. Just as they're running, Dr. Maurer and the nurse take chase. And just as they are making it to the elevator, we hear Dr. Maurer yelling out for Gemma, and he reaches them and says, "You'll kill them all," as the elevator door closes. So Gemma and Mark share another kiss as they go up to the severed floor. And mid-kiss, they transition to Miss Casey and
Didn't learn the
Mark.
first time.
And she asks, "What is taking place?" But there's no time to explain. Mark just takes her hand and they begin running for the exit hallway, the exit stairwell. Back in MDR, Mr. Milchek begins ramming the vending machine again, but this time he's actually moving it. And Helly, by this point, has left Dylan to hold it alone, and Dylan can't hold it alone any longer. We go back to Mark and Miss Casey as they arrive at the stairwell exit, and Mark tells her she has to go. She hesitates a little bit, but ultimately she listens and she goes through that door and changes back into Gemma. Mr. Milchek frees himself from the bathroom and he jumps on to the top of the vending machine, but he finds himself surrounded by Dylan and the C&M department, and they ain't letting him go nowhere. So Miss Casey has now turned back into Gemma, and she turns to see Mark on the other side of the door, and she begins yelling at him through the window to exit. But he starts to reach for the door to push it, and something's not right. As Gemma continues to plead with Mark, Helly appears down at the end of the hallway and calls out to him. He looks at Helly, then back at Gemma, and Gemma seems to know something's off now. Mark turns and he walks to Helly. He looks back at Gemma one last time, but he walks to Helly, takes her hand, and as they turn the corner, Helly has one last look at Gemma, screaming for Mark in the stairwell. Mark and Helly run hand in hand through the halls as the alarm lights flash around them, and we hear the song "The Windmills of Your Mind" by Mel Torme. Where they go, or what they plan to do next, is a mystery for season 3.
Yep, sure is.
Back at the top. So the tie bit, the tie with the, I love this. This was another reaction part too, because in the screening, I heard a bunch of people being like, "Oh, ooh," like, yeah, that's so smart. I was like, that's the same reaction I had, because I immediately was like, "No, Mark, you need her, run after her." I was like, "Go get the nurse. You gotta chase her and get her back here with the gun. You gotta hold her to gunpoint and make her do it." And then the tie worked, and I was like, "Oh, that's so smart. I love that bit. It's a good thing you were covered in blood."
Right? Before even the tie thing, the whole bit with him and Sandra Bernhard, I was like, this is the most Sandra Bernhardy thing I've seen her do this whole season.
Yeah, it was funny because like we talked about that where we're like, "Oh, this character is such a departure from how we normally see her," and then it was like, "Oh, here it is. This was hilarious."
This, and when she yells at Dr. Maurer, it's like, yes, this is Sandra Bernhard.
Oh, so good. So good.
Funny. But yes, very smart of him to use the tie. I too had that same reaction. And I got a little nervous when he got in there. But I was like, at this point, you have to get her out. You've gotten this far. Like, it'd be crazy if you don't get her out of this room.
Yeah, I was like, you know what? It makes, for just the briefest of seconds, I was like, ooh, did she go with him a little too easily? But then I was like, no, because she has only existed for mere minutes. So who are you going to trust? The voice over your head, or the man that just busted in here talking about, "You're my wife and I need to save you"? Yeah. You know what I mean? Yeah. So I was like, no, it tracks. That makes sense.
Also, when he said, "Don't let him touch her," I was like, sense memory. Like,
yeah, they're worried that will break
another thing that clearly can transcend severance, right? It's like when you have these physical interactions with people, that creates a different memory set that isn't tied necessarily to your brain, right? So
yeah,
I wonder if in that moment, not that she necessarily knew him, but if something familiar felt like it like calmed her a bit, or like took away some of the apprehension a bit. But they were very like, "Don't let him touch you." I was like, well, now you gave it away. I'd be like, why?
Yeah.
What's wrong with that? And then when they get back up the elevator and start making out again, I was like, you didn't learn the first time. You just gonna change again. Like, I get y'all are overcome
Yeah.
with emotion.
Yeah.
And it was just the most awkward thing to see. And that was another reactive moment too in the screening where they just are like just face to face. It's like, well, what are we doing? Why are we so close?
Yeah.
Why are we like this?
And my gosh, such a good job by Deitch and Lockman, because everyone, they all have had to do the elevator change and it's a different character, but no one's any is as immediately drastically different as Miss Casey is from Gemma, So it was just like her whole demeanor
Everything
was
changed.
instantly different. And then her voice, that soft voice that she has chosen for Miss Casey. What is taking place here? I loved it so much.
And it was so wild to see her, but as Gemma in terms of her look. It was weird to hear the voice of Miss Casey come out of the body of
Gemma. Yeah.
I had to take a second. I was like, oh, this is messing with my brain a bit.
Right.
But you're right. She had the starkest contrast to make. And again, had to do another like stretch of believability, right? Like, I know you're Mark, but why are we in this elevator? And why are you here in the elevator? No one's ever with me in the elevator. And what's going on? And why do you have blood all over you? And okay, I guess I just go with you. Yeah. So.
Yeah. And it's another moment of, does it make sense for her to trust him so quickly? Yeah. Yeah. If we think back, she has only existed for a very little time. And the only time of her existence that she has really enjoyed has been the time that she's spent with Annie Mark and his department. So she's like, I mean, I could say no, I don't, but like, if there's anybody in here I could trust, it's gonna be you. So,
and again, it's that undercurrent, right, that we talked about during the Gemma episode that brought her up to the floor, and we never heard who she was looking for, but we assume she was going to say that she was looking for Mark.
Yeah.
So I feel like there's something lying under the surface that just lets her know, like, I should go with you. Even if I'm not quite sure why, I probably should just let that happen.
Yeah.
But boy, oh boy, just like they said yesterday in the screening, they gave us that happy ending so quickly, and then they took it away.
When Ben Schwartz said that, it immediately took me back. This is so random, but it immediately took me back to when we saw Black Panther. So Rodnesha and I saw Black Panther with like a bunch of random assortment of people from my high school, and it was was it opening night? Yeah, it was like
I think so.
that, like midnight screening at the ArcLight. R.I.P. ArcLight.
R.I.P. ArcLight.
And I don't know, I think other Black people who went on this journey can relate that if you saw it in a screening full of like-minded people, I mean, sorry, not Black Panther. I said it wrong. Not Black Panther. It was Infinity War. Infinity Wars, right?
Yes.
Because when the end credits started, it was just silence of everybody processing. And what we were collectively processing was that they gave us this Black hero and then so quickly took it away, because Black Panther was the last movie right before that one. So we only had him for a little bit, and then Thanos snapped him away. When they said this, like, they gave us this moment that we were waiting for, and then they took it away. I was like Black Panther.
Random, but it connects.
Random, but connected. It was very emotional.
Before we get to the final part, we got another classic Dylan moment, right, with him and the band. Did he essentially do the callback to when they did the OTC?
Because that's exactly what he said.
Was it the exact same thing he said? Okay.
Exactly. He was like, "You, Mr. Milchick," as he was hanging on, and then he did it again just now. Yeah. So now it's a tradition. It happened once, great. Happened twice, now we got to keep doing it.
Now we got to keep doing it. Yep.
We got to get a you, Mr. Milchick, in the finale.
In some form in the finale. Yep. But at least this time he wasn't alone. Because last time he was just hanging there, strung out. Not like strung out, but body strung out. I don't think that made that better either. Anyway.
No.
And that almost kind of completes the arc a little bit for Dylan this season too, right? It's like they try to make him feel like he was alone in his feelings, and Milchick tried to make him seem like, oh, no one is grateful for what you did for them, and and now he's like rallied with this whole team of people.
Right. And also just, him coming back and helping Helly, like, even though the MDRT is not together, even though Mark was already gone at that point, it still feels like a reunion of the MDR team. Like, he's back home where he's supposed to be. And he's back on mission. Right? Yes. I don't know what's going on, but I know I need to help this now.
Yep. But we know Milchick is a crafty man, so, he might fake a little submission, but that's just to get him right back on top. So we'll see how he gets out of this conundrum.
Yeah. This whole situation with the vending machine just had me being like, Tramel be in the gym. because when he was moving the vending machine, I was like, this man is strong. I mean, obviously wasn't a real vending machine, but I was like,
But still, yeah.
Milchek's strong. And then it was like the second time when he actually is, it's like the alarm goes off.
When the alarm goes off.
He thinks about it, and then he backs up and the adrenaline kicks in, and it's like 10 times harder. I was like, dang. And then the jump. I was like, oh, he be doing that thing at the gym where they be like,
box squats.
jumping on the block.
Yep.
Yeah, that's what they call it. I was like, I know there's a name for it. Because that was a big jump.
It's a big jump.
I forgot to say when Helly hit him in the head with the trombone. That was the other time where I was like, Milchek, they don't pay you enough for this. You need to go.
Quit right now.
You need to go.
Quit literally while you're ahead.
Especially when they showed him looking in the mirror with that thing on his head. I was like, Milchek,
but it's true. You don't get paid enough for this. And the doubling down of it all, right? Where that alarm goes off. He could have in that moment, like you said, been like, I don't get paid enough for this. This is ridiculous. I'm done. Nope. And just like wait to be let out and then just go home, right? But the fact that he heard that alarm, and I could, again, just see the thought process of like, they're going to blame me for this. They're going to come and look at me. I'm going to be the one who failed the great grand mission of Kier and whatever. And I'm not going out like that. And just doubles down on like, I'm going to get this thing out of my way. And I'm dealing with whoever's in front of me, although he wasn't expecting a whole team of people to be. But, you could just see that shift where it's like, no more Mr. Nice Guy. But then that makes me wonder next season when we come back to him, are we truly going to get no more Mr. Nice Guy? Because we keep seeing this back and forth. And I'm like, is he going to fully cross over or is he, what's going to happen?
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know if we're going to see him. I mean, we're going to see him, but I don't know if we're going to see him in a position of power.
That's what
I think they're gonna have to knock him down some pegs because like you said, he's gonna be blamed for all of this.
Ooh, thought. Do we think he gets let go from Lumen? This whole thing is blamed on him. He goes and finds Cobell and teams up with Cobell to take Lumen down.
Ooh. I don't know.
I don't either. That just came to me though. I was like, they, it's like the enemy of my enemy is my friend and whatnot. Yeah. So I could see him humbling himself and they formed their own little, again, for their own self-seeking purposes. Like, I'm not saying it's to save innies, but it's like, you know what? I was scorned. You were scorned. We know some things. We both ran the floor. So, do you think they let him go because he ran the floor? He knows too much. But they did that with Cobell too. You're right. You're right. They don't think ahead. Okay. All right. Let's get to this ending that breaks your heart. Makes you sad. I love Ben Stiller's 70s references. I love how this is clearly like the era that shaped and defined him, right? Like, I love that the way he kind of did the ending of this episode. There's so many different like iconic movies that I can't name off the top of my head, but like the references and the way that they're shot, like the way they panned into Dr. Maurer when he runs into the hall just reminded me of like certain 70s movies or spy movies and things like that, where I'm just like, oh, this is so interesting. And I know some of that is on the cinematographer as well, but like you could just tell that this is clearly, again, like these are eras and shot POVs that have defined kind of his directing style. And I love that he just kind of let this whole episode be a lot of that. Yeah. So we get to this hallway scene, the slow motion, the music, I was so frustrated because I was like, I get it. It's Helly and you're torn and whatever. But like you said earlier, realistically, how does this work, Mark? Yeah. How does this work? I get it. You've been dealt a raw hand and it sucks. But also this woman is here and she's being hunted and she's wanted proprietary information of Lumen. You only got her to the hall. She ain't even out in the lot. Like, what? Right. Someone could just swoop down right now and get her. It's your responsibility.
Yeah. Audi you was supposed to be there to help get her the rest of the way out. Yeah.
So I was partly frustrated because of just the shirking of responsibility. Like, I got you out of the testing floor. Yeah. Right. It's like, okay, but she's still in the building. Like,
still in the building.
Come on. What's going to happen to her? And then you're going to take off and go running with Helly to where? Right. To do what? Right. Y'all going to hide out in one of the random rooms and eat vending machine snacks?
Yeah. And there's a part where like they're running and they're like not fully smiling happy, but they're happy. They've made their choice. They're like, yeah. And then they start to go like, huh. And I think it's almost like they're realizing as they're running that, wait, what the are we actually doing? Like, where are we going? What is about to happen?
You said that and it just dawned on me. It's The Graduate, the ending in The Graduate.
Oh, yeah.
Where they think like we're happy, we got what we wanted. And then in the car it settles and they're like, wait.
Yeah. Yeah.
See? all these references. As soon as you said that, it did not click until you said that. And I was like, oh, it's the Graduate. It's the same ending as the Graduate. Because I noted that same thing on their faces. And I think they did that on purpose to be like,
Yeah.
all right, this seemed like a cool idea at first, but wait, where does this go?
Ooh.
How does this end?
Yeah. Wouldn't that be funny if we start off with them like literally picking up and it's like mid-run, he's like, wait a minute, I gotta go help her. And he just turns around and sprints back. That would be hilarious.
That would be funny. It would be funny and also frustrating because it's like, we could have, you'd have wasted like 10 minutes running the halls and she's just standing there. I'll be so upset if they did all that to get her out and she gets caught next season.
Oh,
I'll be so upset. Because like I said, all I could think.
Yeah, she's still in the building.
Is she's still in the building. They have sounded an alarm. People know that if an alarm is sounding, something real, real bad is happening. And I just was like, what if someone came rushing down those stairs and just snatched her up?
Ooh. My only hope is that Cobell gave the instruction to go to the stairwell because she knows something about the protocol and like that's going to be the best route.
Maybe.
But again, that's also with the assumption that Audi Mark, who has been all around the building, is the outside of the building, the non-severed parts, is gonna know how to guide her.
Right.
Gemma doesn't know. I mean, we assume that she wasn't walked up to the 7th floor. She was taken unconscious. So she don't know what to do except run for down and out. And
again, it was very cute. I was like, cute. You chose Helly. Cute. It's very cute. I love that for you. Love it. But we have a real emergency happening right now.
Yeah. And it's very like, I have to deal with my like cognitive dissonance that's created by my feelings for this because it conflicts with my overall feeling for innings in the show, right? Where if I am not a hypocrite and innies deserve their life and they deserve their autonomy and they deserve to have love, and which is what I believe, but what I have grown to believe through loving our MDR team, then I should not be upset with Mark's decision because it's the only decision that makes sense for him. He does not know this woman and he sees her crying for him because she's in love with a version of him that he does not know. He does not know who she is. And then he in his gut feels that something is wrong. And then the thing that is wrong is confirmed when Helly comes. And also Helly has released him and then changed her mind by being there. And so he's like, she was wrong. This is wrong.
That part too.
So I am so conflicted because I too am like, come on, this is selfish. And it's like, selfish or self-preserving, like what's the line? And like, he's allowed to have a self-preservation instinct. I believe that. So I can't be mad at him for following it. I'm mad at the situation.
Exactly. That's that part. The whole situation sucks. The whole thing sucks. But like you said, Helly wasn't supposed to be there. And I think if she hadn't been there, he may have just gone through. But seeing her obviously was like,
right. And you get that moment where they all hear the alarms before. We don't see Helly actually take off. We just see now that she's gone once they go back to Dylan in MDR.
Right.
But you can see that she's like, oh, I know that means he's getting her out. I told him to do this, but do I really want this?
Right. And there was a part of me that was like, is she going for him because she's worried maybe he might need help? Maybe he got caught. That might have been the catalyst. It's like, oh, they've got alarms sounding. What if they get caught? What if they don't make it? I should go. However, even if that was the catalyst, once she got to the hall and saw him there, she should have
I was like, tell him to go. Tell him to go, Helly. Tell him to go. He needs to hear it again. But no, she didn't.
So I was like, well, that ruined that.
She couldn't back up what she was saying earlier.
Yeah.
She changed her mind. Yeah.
So I guess we'll see where this all goes from here. Again, another brilliant song choice on the end song. I looked up lyrics on that too. And it's really just about, conflicting swirly emotions. Appropriate.
Appropriate. Yeah. Again, I'm not mad at you anymore. I'm mad at the situation.
I'm mad at the situation. Well, guys, that's episode 10. We don't know where this is going to go. We do know that there is a season 3. Thank goodness.
Thank goodness. And we hope and pray that it's not another 3 years. It won't be. There was just a very specific set of circumstances that caused it.
They honestly just each season just happened to catch the wrong time of life every time. It was like, oh, COVID. Ooh, crap. Whoa. Okay. Oh, strikes. Crap. Like, what do we got to do?
Dang it.
So yes, everything should go to plan this time. We shouldn't have to wait nearly as long. I think some people were talking to me and they were like, oh, it's probably going to be another 3 years. I was like, one, it better not be. And two, I doubt it because they're just,
No,
each time we're just continuing circumstances that went beyond production, right? It wasn't
right.
like they were holding out.
Yeah.
So I don't know when we'll see you guys back in terms of episodes recapping, but you can count on us to continue to deliver content and podcasts for you guys because we plan to keep going. Now, won't be at the same pace.
Yeah, it won't be a weekly release, but we've got plans for plenty of interim episodes. Do we want to say one we have confirmed or do we want to hold it?
You know what? Sure. Why not? Why not?
So one of our episodes, we don't have a release date for you, but very soon we are going to have the pleasure of speaking to Kier Chosen One, Kier Mark Geller.
Yes.
So, we're so excited about that.
We can't wait.
He's going to be a guest on the show. Yay!
So yeah, stay tuned for that. We will be talking to him, getting insights from him on his time. I mean, this is a face we have seen woven throughout this entire thing. So I'm super excited to talk to him. But yeah, we are working on trying to line up potentially other interviews. We have other content we're looking to do as well, deep dives, some kind of side questy stuff. We're looking at exploring some of the other works that our beloved actors and directors and writers have done outside of Severance that have led them to this moment. So all of that is coming. So stick with us.
Yes. And, continue to send ideas and requests and stuff. Yeah. We've had some people co-sign the idea we presented last week about cinematography and directing deep dive. And then we got a great idea about like character story arcs. So yeah, send them our way. We're trying to incorporate them.
But yeah, we're not done with Severance yet, and Severance is not done with you. So in the meantime, continue to follow us on all of our social media handles. That includes Threads, Blue Sky, TikTok, Lemonade, Instagram. At the UUR Pod is where we can be found. You can also email us at the uurpod@gmail.com, especially through this little interim time. We should have a lot more time to respond to you. I've got 2 outstanding, but they'll be answered tonight. And you can also still become a patron at patreon.com/the We're keeping that up. We've got members there already, and we're going to continue to deliver bonus content. We have different tier levels to your choosing or liking. Go check us out on Patreon. See what membership tier works for you. We would appreciate and love the support. Honestly, it has been a big help to us so far, and we hope it will continue to help us grow this podcast, the community, the resources we need to keep delivering all this stuff to you guys. So as always, rate, review, and subscribe wherever you get your podcasts. 5 stars, 5 turtles, 5 lamps. I don't know. Again, if 5 is good, if it's 10, if it's 1, you know what to do. We trust you guys.
So before I do this outro, we said it when we wrapped up our season 1, but it just has to be said again. Rodnesha, my dear friend, I can't imagine doing this podcast with anyone but you, and I'm so glad you asked me to do this with you. It's so much fun.
I roped you into yet another crazy
she just
idea.
Be presenting projects to me, and I'm like, yeah, sure, let's do it. But
talk about a yes man.
Truly, what a ride.
Yes, thank you for saying yes. Thank you for trusting my weird brain with all these random offshoot ideas.
You're welcome.
I could not imagine doing it with anyone else. It has been fun. It has been a joy. And I'm excited for what we're going to get into this next phase. Honestly, I'm going on a tangent, y'all. We've talked forever, but whatever, you're here. We honestly had no clue what this was going to look like, what it was going to turn into, if anyone was going to listen. We thought we might just be talking to each other for however many weeks. The fact that it has become what it has become, and we've built this little niche of a community, and we have people who are checking in and listening and knowing about us and all this stuff is wild. Did not think this would be the case at all. We just thought, okay, we'll just do what we do as friends, which is talk, and we'll just do it in front of other people. Maybe they care, maybe they don't. So I'm like, oh, we actually now have to think about like how to move this forward. And as we said at the top of the episode, you don't know what you can do until you're doing it. So I'm like, I don't know what this is going to look like, but I trust that we can do it because we've done it before. So we'll do it again.
You're damn right. Okay. And now with that, this has been the UUR. And remember,
See you at the equator.